Right, I'd like to welcome you all here to Crewe for this historic meeting of our 7 different parties from all over the country, not just England, Wales, but Wales and Scotland as well. And so it's wonderful to see you all, and thanks for coming such long distances. It's much appreciated. And we now move to our first speaker, which is Dr. Tek Kong, who is the former of the founder of the Belmont Accord. Tek.
Thank you very much, Brian. I apologise for my late arrival and all this messing about. As I drove out of the house, 2 miles down the road, my front suspension decided to break. So I had to limp back, and I came in, drove in Linda's car. So better late than never, let's say. As Brian has mentioned, it's so pleasing to see you all here today. We had a very slow start. The Alliance for Democracy and Freedom, founded by 4 very good and honourable veteran politicians, Michael Cumb, Annie Warrender, Keith Lonsdale, and Paul Goodring. They had a vision. They had a vision that, first of all, the new party had to reflect the wishes of the British people, because they have seen that over the previous 3 general elections, the country was deviating further and further into a very unsavoury decline. And Paul, unfortunately, who couldn't be here, was going to talk about how there is no party that the British people can trust anymore. Unfortunately, Paul can't join us because of a family bereavement, and I'm sure our sympathies go out to him. He's lost his daughter, his eldest daughter, a couple of weeks ago. So Paul is at home. Anyway, back to ADF, the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom. Mike eschewed the use of the word party in the registration with the Electoral Commission, hoping to draw on various patriots, small parties, independent candidates from up and down the country to join in a crusade to see the revival of patriotism in this country, and also to safeguard British values, which are so precious to so many people. Fast forward, we had a difficult time really. We didn't fast forward very much, because the party was registered in August of 2020, right bang in the middle of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. So we were going to launch with a fanfare, but everything was muted. In the following year, I said to Mike, we should pursue our mission. I think the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom is a very lengthy title for what is actually a very sound movement. So why not let's invite various people to get the support, and most of all, I think if people were fervent in a desire to pursue a British ideal, people would see the difficulties that we have and come together. So we invited UKIP, we invited Reclaim, we invited Reform, David Curtin's party, Heritage, and SDP. We invited a lot of people. The time turned up. Reclaim was going to attend, but Lawrence said his car broke down on the way. We didn't get a response from David when I invited him to send his deputy. So we carried on. Regardless, we had a declaration signed in absentia by the Time Party, which eventually merged later that year. We had Freedom Alliance come to talk to us. Jonathan Tilt, the former leader, was on the verge of merging with us. But things took a back seat. Anyway, last year we decided to give it one more resuscitation, as it were. And we got together in Bromyard, and Catherine was there. Do you know who else? Well, we had Libertarian. UKIP didn't turn up. We had Jeremy Moss representing English Democrats. Jeremy. So we signed an agreement last year, in April last year, where we agreed to field 35 candidates, obviously fighting 35 seats up and down the country. So that was a victory in itself. We were able to get a feeling of common purpose, excuse the expression, but we were determined to show our force, and we hope, that the British people saw that there was an alternative to reform, which was galloping away with popularity and in opinion polls. But we are honest, we are not funded by rich, big money, big benefactors, although we have a very kind gentleman here amongst our midst today. And we decided to gather more and more people. So we had Brian join us. We have, as I mentioned, Brian, who set up the crew first, Catherine, and then we had Russell is in here, Russell White of the Populist Party. We have Robin Tilbrook from the English Democrats, and we are today joined by National Housing Party UK. I think Pat is coming to
he's on as well
with us.
Sure.
So we're here today. We are, if you notice, quite a lot older than the average citizen on the street, but that's because I think we are very ambitious in our desire to see a revival of, as I mentioned, the British spirit. We need to get younger people involved. We need to get more ladies involved. But I'm sure we are on the right path. I think, although we are full of enthusiasm, replete with experience, we are unfortunately a bit pecunious in funds. So we need fundraising, and I think that should be very much something which we'll take up in our campaign. So what makes me think that we as a group are going to be successful? And I think we are. What we need to do is to focus on solutions, because there's an awful lot of talk, a lot of complaint out there. People saying, oh, we have too many illegal immigrants coming in, taxation is too high, we're getting... A lot of these things, as a small group, even though we are now 7, we don't have the wherewithal to change things. We certainly have we don't figure at all in geopolitics. So what I suggest is we connect with local people, we connect with the community, and we offer solutions. We can actually start working solutions. Now, I know you might think, coming from a health background, I'm biased, but there is a real possibility of doing something if we all pool together our resources. Now, one of the things we find more and more on the streets, in clubs and pubs where we hear people speak, is the poor access to your GP. Okay? And you might think health is actually configured nationally in Parliament. Legislation is passed. The Health and Care Act, for example, 2022, devolve a lot of the capital spend to integrated care boards. How do we do that? So, in my experience, for example, I've been looking at health policy from when I was a Conservative parliamentary candidate. I set up the Policy Forum on Health with Andrew Lansley. In this new era, what we have is integrated care boards where the people's representative in the form of councillors sit alongside NHS representatives and decide local policies. So when I was on the board in 2011 to 2015, we were on the boards with councillors. Now I can tell you, the majority of councillors who attend board meetings, in those days it was CCG meetings, they were not actively involved in guiding the policy. They were very interested in actually So the councillors who attended joint meetings were very passive, and the NHS representative, the NHS side, were literally rubber stamping what came down from Whitehall. So here's a chance with the devolution of care budgets to the 42 integrated care boards the government has set up. What we need to do is to get councillors elected onto their local councils and start influencing policy. And I'll show you in a short time from now how that can be done. We're here today now, we've got a full complement. Despite our differences, important as they may be in terms of how we address different types of issues in the community at large, we have a common enemy. The common enemy comes in the form of globalists. Okay, so you have globalist organizations, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and rich individuals, powerful rich individuals. You probably know the likes of Bill Gates and so on. So they form an axis of what I would call perverse influence on our society. And together, if we unite the people out in the community against these forces, we can win. When I say we go local, it is very important to remember, I mean, there's the people like Advance, for example, they're not quite registered as a political party, but Ben wants to be in Parliament. What he doesn't remember is Parliament doesn't sit on nothing. It has to be built on the foundation of local support, and that starts with councillors. So going forward in 2026, the 7th of May, I would like to see as many of you as possible sending representatives to win councils. Now, we're not going to do it randomly because our 7 parties across the United Kingdom is very thinly spread. To actually influence health, to see how we can serve the people, to show them that we mean what we set out to do, we should start targeting areas where we can start winning control. So, for example, in Nottinghamshire, there are 66 council seats. We don't need to win all 66 seats. If we win 34, 35, we are there. Because we will then make the right noises and start changing things. Okay? When I was heading the campaign for the Conservative Association in Harborough, I brought out all my patients and I added an extra 10,000 to Sir Edward Garnier's normally 6,000 to 9,000 majority. He'd been in 3 terms. So what it is I also then set about ensuring that the Conservative increased the footprint in the council. So we went from 2 councillors and I got 4 more councillors. So 6 out of 28. But it was insufficient. I kept a very quiet position. I just observed because even though all 6 Conservative and 2 Labour councillors voted, I couldn't get anything passed because the other 20 Lib Dems kept getting their way through. So what we need to do is to control a council and do something that we can show the public we mean what we say. So, for example, although housing of immigrants is dictated from the government, and if we object too heavily, we could be seeing a council in special measures or overridden by the legal process. But in health, there is no such thing. Okay, so we should be able to do something about it. So as I mentioned before, David joined us. Yes. We need to agree which English councils, which Senate seats, and which seats in the Scottish Parliament we're going to contest. The reason for that is we should try and leave our egos behind. We will find the best candidate possible for each seat, and we should identify the councils where collectively all 7 parties have the most members. There's no point, say, trying to fight a council endorsed when we have, say, 10 members and they can't even get a single ward under the control. So we've got to identify, we've got to concentrate our effort. Now, part of the agreement that Catherine and I reached when we were the first to sign this Belmont Accord was that we share intelligence, we share information on where our strengths are. And Russell was very kind. He collated information on where the weak seats were. Although we didn't actually put into practice, we still fielded 35 parliamentary candidates up and down the country. So we identify and prioritize issues according to public concerns. Now, because we're fighting local elections, there will be local issues. And a lot of people, unfortunately, think that health can't be a local issue, it's dictated from the House of Commons, but it isn't. Because with the 2022 Health and Care Act, we have the opportunity to do something about it. We need to set up teams. It's coming towards the end of November. 7th of May is not too far away. So we need to get hold of a team. We need to coordinate. So I think Brian, Catherine, Russell, I think there are very enthusiastic people in the room, and we'll start to coordinate, gather intelligence on where the weakest councils or the best places where we can contest, and start selecting candidates. And then we start campaigning. We have in the room Mr. Sid Pepper, who has kindly supported ADF up until this point, and he's also offered his help to support the Belmont group. So I think we're very grateful to Sid, who's not only given us support, he's actually physically here today to show his alignment with us. Now, when I went round Melton, or when I went round Bradford when I was doing a general election of 2005, it is not only a way to gather people interested in what you stand for, it also engages them, it makes them feel as if they are part of the political drive. So I think local fundraising not only help you with getting money into the war chest, but it also engages people who would then multiply your influence across the community. So local, please don't depend just on the central organization. I think the good thing about Belmont is it's decentralized, and we will entrust the fundraising, the campaigning to all the groups in the different parts of the country. But as I say, while we do that, we must also remember we need to target from the outset. Instead of having our energies dissipated over a wide area, we must concentrate our efforts on winnable councils, winnable seats in the Senate, winnable seats in the Scottish Parliament. Now, I'll just take a brief run through and tell you why the health system has gone from bad to worse. When Thatcher came in, what she decided was there wasn't enough competition, not enough quality building efforts in the health service. So she started the general idea was to introduce the internal market. She started with compulsory competitive tendering. So for those services that were peripheral to the health service, the NHS, the delivery of the medical care, she thought the best thing is to have compulsory tendering. So we get the best caterers in, we get the best physiotherapists in, whatever it is. It aligned with the Griffiths report, which suggested that the NHS would be placed under managers. Now, before that, back in the 70s, when I first qualified, for example, there were hospital governors and board of governors. So when I was working in Sheffield, the Royal Hospital Sheffield had his own board of governors, a very tight team that looked after his affairs. But that was all changed when Thatcher came in. She wanted competitive tendering and the operation of health delivery by managers. Now, nowhere do you see the patient being put in the equation. It's all about we the politicians control the doctors, control the people. We think we know what the people want. We give it to them the way we see it. And that's very flawed. She decided that she would make groups of doctors compete for so-called business, but it's all internal, it's all based on your taxes. The idea was to control prescribing. Now, it's an antithesis of care, because if you start controlling costs, you have straight away introduced a negative element in taking care of people. As I always said in my public addresses over the years as a doctor, I'll give you whatever is best for you. It may be the cheapest, it may be the most expensive, but the ambition is to get you well again, make you productive again, contribute to the economy of the country, put food on the table for your family. Reduce hospital referrals. You know, there were doctors in my time who were specialized in whatever they did. For example, I went through registrar training in neurology, chest medicine. So I was able to deal with those things at a GP level, and only the very difficult cases in those specialties were referred. Now, reducing hospital referrals would work if all the doctors were equally competent, enthusiastic, and well-trained. But if it was an incentive to say, look, if you save so much money, we'll give you so much money towards your practice, that becomes flawed, because the incentive then is not to keep up the excellence, but to actually keep the money back. So again, patients suffered. So although the idea was right, they didn't think through the consequences. Negotiating with providers was the core of getting quality, because in any business, you know, when you have competition, it drives up quality, it keeps down prices, and that was the basic tenet. But it didn't quite work. So then came Tony Blair. Now he started dividing up the NHS, which is an integral service throughout the United Kingdom, into NHS England, NHS Wales, and Rob will tell you what a hash they made of the job. NHS of Scotland, and then we have Health and Social Care of Northern Ireland. Alan Milburn in the early 2000s decided to be bold. So not only did they accelerate, the Labour Party accelerate the PFI, the Private Finance Initiative, they also signed services with the private sector. So they would decant long waiting lists onto the private sector to get things doing. In theory, that was very good. But unfortunately, it de-incentivized, it demoralized those doctors in the NHS, thinking that, well, if the work is going across to the private sector, there isn't a need for us to keep doing it. And what happened was a lot of consultants on part-time contract then drifted across to the private sector. He introduced what we call practice-based commissioning, where groups of doctors would hold funds. So it's a progression from Margaret Thatcher's GP fund holding. But it didn't work. I'll tell you why. Because there were doctors who were very entrepreneurial, doctors who were very practical, decided to challenge the model. In Leicestershire, I set up the Leicestershire Medical Chambers. It was like a bit of Noah's Ark. We had 2 gynecologists, 2 cardiothoracic surgeons, 2 of virtually everything. But you know, Tim Rideout, the chief executive, said, "Tech, your group is too big, too powerful, and too dominant." So it lay dormant in the company's house for 2 years, and then we just closed it down. Then came modernising medical careers. Now, the Labour government thought that previously the progression to consultant rank was a bit haphazard, and there was a bit of the old school system where if I knew your school or if I know your dad, I'll give you a position of being a consultant. But unfortunately, modernising medical careers came at a time when the EU was imposing working time directive on us. So that restricted the number of training places. It also reduces the exposure of trainees to intensive expertise building. And then we had an agenda for change where different groups of specialties underwent radical changes. For example, the agenda of for change was applied to nursing, to physiotherapy, and so on. And last but not least, they introduced something called the NHS Directive. Dial 111, you get to somebody trained to go by algorithm to decide where you should be directed. All these things, you never really talk to the patients about it. They decide, look, we're going to shield you away from unnecessary exposure to the people you need to see. Okay, you go through an organised system, and you get to see. But the thing, it doesn't work. Okay, the government should learn to trust the people more. Cameron with Andrew Lansley, he set up the Health and Social Care Act, which in fact distanced the Secretary of State from the performance of various elements of the health service. It unfortunately fell into disrepute and didn't do very much. And now we arrive in the COVID era. Now COVID caught a lot of people by surprise, caught me by surprise, because we thought, it wouldn't happen, but looking back now, we know that it's been in the planning for some time. There were various agendas being pursued under the COVID pandemic regulations. They were trying to do various things, as you probably know. They were trying to see how compliant the population would be. There are various evidence that a lot of people suffered, either in terms of getting short-term harms, long-term illnesses, and even deaths. I used to be a research registrar in Glasgow. I did a bit of immunology as part of the rheumatology. And I saw how the body's enzyme and what they were putting in the vaccine could actually lead to, by virtue of a reverse transcriptase enzyme, actually incorporate this RNA material into our genetic material and cause problems. So when the BBC announced that Lisa Shaw was certified to have died from COVID, why did they continue? There were more deaths, but why, to this day, are they still pushing the vaccine to their agendas? When I was doing research, when you had serious adverse incidents being reported, or even let alone a death, the drug trial would be stopped. This COVID vaccine still continues. And I wrote an article in the Daily Express in February of 2021. I said, look, we don't need to give our children. Jonathan Van Tam was proposing that we trial this in children. We don't need to trial it in children. Children don't get coronavirus illnesses, let alone suffer mortality. But he went ahead. I saw my first case of myocarditis in a teenager while working in A&E in Nottingham. A healthy boy getting short of breath, getting chest pain, playing football 2 weeks after his jab. That is unconscionable. So we have corruption of medical ethics. My own wife went for her COVID jab. I said, what did they tell you? Nothing, you'll be fine. And we get a bit of soreness. That is an informed consent. There wasn't informed consent because there were no proper trials conducted. There was not a list of things to tell people In fact, any procedure like that, when done in a clinical setting during my time, you tell people, look, we have a new product. You are invited to take part, or you can refuse. And if you refuse, your care will not be compromised. And if it's a treatment that you require, we'll find an alternative treatment. There was no such process being undertaken for people having the COVID jab. There was no informed consent because there was no data about what's right or wrong about it. And people were just pushed into having it. The doctors, I was very disappointed. The majority of them fell for it. They listened to the government, but didn't listen to those few people who were raising concerns. So people like Dr. Sam White was castigated and suspended. Dr. Muhammad Adil, and then latterly we have people like Dr. David Cartland. I just managed to duck and dive. Very difficult, very sad. I'm sure in this room there will be people who know of sufferers of the vaccine injury. At the same time, we find that access to doctors was being curtailed. So you had serious problems. If you think you had COVID, you couldn't even see the doctor. Take a few paracetamols, keep away, put a mask on, keep your social distance. The virus can only jump 1.9 meters, but not 2 meters. You'll be all right. But that's the suckers they take us to be. We treated as suckers. The whole health service was being dumbed down. There isn't a single practice I know now that has returned to normal levels of operation. You walk into a surgery, you don't see the chairs being occupied. You phone up for an appointment, you're in a queue. And if you're lucky, you get to see a clinical assistant, a nurse, and not a doctor.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very sad. And the Royal College has the temerity, that's just why I say multiple agendas, of issuing doctors the Royal College guidebook on how to be green. We train as doctors. We didn't train in climate manipulation. On climate, for example, there'll be people on the streets who don't think anything adverse to these streaks going across the skies. I didn't believe anything until I saw reports. And then I saw and observed how they were different from condensation trails. Chemical trails are not condensation trails. But these things are full of aluminium, strontium, and so on. They're toxic to us, but they're doing to us. So there are enough issues to engage with people, enlighten people on the streets to get you to win support, win your council seats, and eventually, at the next general election, if it was ever held, to get to the green benches. I think I've discussed quite a bit of this. I'll just go to strategy because I think strategy is very important. So we talked about how we are being abused. You know, this assisted dying bill, I think it's a travesty. I don't know whoever thought that they could actually get an assisted dying bill. I remember back in 2015, 2014-15, I stood up in the CCG meeting. I was a CCG board member. And there was a hush across the room. They said, "Ted, don't say it." So I stood up and said, look, we are trained. We know when death is imminent. We don't need to put people on end-of-life care pathways. We don't need to over-sedate them. We just use our sense of compassion, our clinical skills, and manage the best we can. Do you know what? Why I stood up, they said, we will give doctors £100 a patient to fill in this 10-page document, end-of-life care pathway. We are trialing this to see how effective it is. That is subversion of medical ethics, subversion of professional integrity of the highest and worst order. The next one, the Pandemic Preparedness Treaty. It's very interesting. If there was a genuine virus affecting the world, spreading around, We don't need a treaty where we forego our sovereignty, our rights, our legislation. We share best practices. Yeah, so the clinicians can talk amongst themselves. With this sort of illness, with this sort of thing, we give this, we treat that. We do not need a treaty to deal with a real pandemic. Right. After hearing from Rob about how bad the Welsh are being treated in terms of health, I decided to look up, and sure enough, they have an awful lot of problems. Do you know, we spend huge amount of money. NHS England spends 200 billion. NHS for the whole of UK is 300 billion. I remember the time when Tony Blair came in, the Conservative government was spending 37 billion pounds. That's all. We now have nearly 10 times as much. And the service is certainly 10 times worse. Anybody dispute that? So we need to do something. We need to ensure that care standards are held up. And we want to bring back personal autonomy. People have got to be empowered. You should know the power is with them, not with the government. Don't delegate it to the government. And I'll tell you why things have gone wrong. The government taxed the people to pay the doctors to look after the patients. But what happens is, since Thatcher's time, the patients are neglected. They think, or you think, you're being looked after. The money is then used to pursue so-called policies in your interest. When you hear the word in your interest, always suspect. So what happens is, when I was a GP, when I first left hospital service to become a GP, 60 to 70% of my income was made up from capitation. The better I looked after people, the better my take-home pay would be. Towards the end, it was less than 20%, a mere 15%. And I had to give up because the health centre was being privatised, the rents kept going up, I had to pay for my staff pensions, I couldn't cope anymore, so I gave up my practice. Eventually it's now been sold to a private provider. Now, a year ago I decided to stay in touch, I've retired, to stay in touch to find out what the GP contract was. The first big GP contract came in 2004. The first thing I noticed was a YouTube discussion between two doctors, how to maximize your income. I thought the doctor's role was not to maximize income. We all need money to live, but we got into the vocation to care for people. Okay? So it shows how distorted things have become. From 60% based on capitation to mere 20%. So the rest are made up in targets. So if you had so many people coaxed into stopping cigarette cessation, you were given so many pounds. I remember they were dangling 50 pence per patient to convert from a more expensive statin to a cheaper statin. The doctors have lost it. They have been bribed, they have been captured. So what we need to do is to take that equation away and reconnect doctors with patients. And this is how we do it. This is from the local government association. I think you might be a member. As a councillor.
I was in the past.
Yes. So what it is they say with this funding going towards more and more local determination, we should be able to improve care and care services. Unfortunately, the bulk of the money going to councils is actually spent in health promotion. Vague things like, please don't smoke, please don't do this, don't do that, exercise more. Nothing about, for example, if you want to promote health that makes sense, what you is you improve your medical services, treat people early with the best treatment, get them back to become economically productive. Not telling all sorts of waffle that they know themselves. So in this chart, which I got from King's Fund, I think, it shows that 30% of the budget is actually in woolly things. schools, voluntary services, social care. That should be actually taken out of the budget. Social care should never be part of health and social care. Now, having seen what's happening in Wales, that Rob drew my attention, there's a lot of political incompetence, and certainly in Wales there's a cohort of old school physicians and nurses saying we want to come out. Even in Leicester, for example, I had people come and retired consultants say, I want to do my bit to help, if you can organise something. And we can. Now Richard Taylor is a very interesting chap, okay? Recently retired at the time. And what the Labour government was planning to do was to move Kidderminster Hospital acute services, including the A&E, to Worcester, 18 miles away. So the residents of Kidderminster, and certainly a lot of staff in Kidderminster, were very concerned about the decimation of the services. So this was a snapshot of when Tony Blair came to power. So David Locke had a majority of 6,900, very healthy majority, grabbed the seat from the Conservative. But Kidderminster Hospital Group had one issue. They wanted to retain A&E, they wanted to serve the population, and this is where I think local issues are so important. So Richard Taylor came in, and he had a whopping 17,000 majority, a huge swing. And he kept the seat for 2 more terms.
Okay, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Based on that, I noticed there's no Liberal Democrat. Did they actually work with Richard Taylor in order to help him get elected? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know that one, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just because they're not there.
Could be, yes. Yes.
Just wondered.
So that's an example of galvanizing the public behind a very hot issue. I know that's virtually a single issue election, but if you can get support behind you on a few key issues, things that you can actually make a change, then you find support. Now, how do we do it? We win control of the council, as I mentioned, for example, in Nottinghamshire, 66 seats. We don't need to win all 60 or 66 of them. We just need to win the majority and keep pushing what we need to do. We exercise the mandate of the people. We have the people behind us. And we reconfigure the services. I showed the King's Fund diagram. We will, if the people are having difficulty getting to the GPs, we will set aside so-called health promotion funding to employ doctors that will actually serve that need. We will strengthen the relationship between the council and the doctors. So, at the moment, I mean, the latest should include a reform group now because they want a few councils. But what I'd like to see is Belmont doing that, a Belmont group. So that's a hope, and that should be our ambition. So, without much ado, I've occupied enough time. I'm happy to answer any questions. I've taken the liberty of making this slightly longer because, as I say, Paul is unable to join us today because of his family bereavement. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I hope it has given you some encouragement, and even though I'm retired, I'm happy to, as Ken would say, be in the backseat to give you support. Thank you very much.
I'll just crack on for a short time. We've got a number of speakers to get through. Brilliant to see everybody here, fantastic. We dragged half of them kicking and screaming from Glasgow to be here today. So very appreciative of you guys coming down, and I think we actually almost outnumber the English and the Welsh here. Done quite a good job there. So you came in the back okay? Yeah, good. I'm Ken Thompson, the Scottish leader of the ADF, or the leader in Scotland of the ADF. I was born and bred in Barhead, which is just about 10 miles outside of Glasgow, south of Glasgow. Well, actually, I was born in Elderslie, which is the birthplace of William Wallace, so hopefully some of the minerals he had in his blood. Yeah, my grandfather was a tarpaulin maker, as I was for most of my career, and his grandfather was a tarpaulin maker, and his grandfather was a farmer. So just all just about round about Glasgow area. So we've got Glasgow in the blood for a long, long time, and we've my great grandfather was he started off polishing railway engines on the Kirkintilloch to Airdrie line, which was to move coal from Airdrie, the rich coal seams in Airdrie, to the Forth and Clyde Canal, because there was a monopoly on the railway line which ran, or sorry, the canal, the Monklands Canal, so that they were charging fortunes to transport the coal, and so they put the railway in. 1824, I think it was approved by Parliament, and in 1826 it was finished. Can you believe that? 2 years to build a 10-mile railway line. What would it take nowadays? It'd take years and huge amounts of money. So and that helped the growing industry in Glasgow, feeding the coals to the mills and all the factories and industry that were in Glasgow, where Glasgow, became the second city of the empire. And so the Scottish ascendancy really started from religious freedom and the freedom from the Roman Church in Scotland, where we had the Reformation, which came over from the continent and infected Scotland with the man of John Knox, and he laid the foundations, spoke truth to power, was able to speak truth to the royalty, risking his life, and many had died before him to advance the cause of Christian liberty and freedom. And see on the banners we've got here today, we've got freedom, freedom, freedom. Christianity, the Lion of Judah, arguably is where the Lion Rampant comes from. And I've got the train, which I spoke about in the Airdrie to Kirkintilloch line. So I've been involved with the ADF for a few years now, and I became tech persuaded me. I was in UKIP. Before that, I first stood in for the Conservatives in 2002 as a councillor when I thought they were okay. They became a bit too Euro-friendly for me, so Nigel Farage was on the rise, and sort of inspired me to get involved with UKIP. I think I joined UKIP probably just at the end when Farage left UKIP and then called everybody a racist. So that was really great, wasn't it? So anyway, we plodded on, and I was chairman of UKIP in Fife in mid-Scotland for a few years, and we had quite a strong contingent up there. I think we probably were 150 members or something in the Fife region of UKIP. But then UKIP lost their way during COVID, where I could really see through the COVID thing, and COVID, it was absolute propaganda, nonsense, no substance to it whatsoever. And I was a bit disillusioned with UKIP because they didn't really do anything, didn't say anything about the COVID scenario. And Tech had been on at me to join the ADF. So, and of course Tech's the man who stood up and spoke out against the COVID measures at the time. So joined the ADF and went for that. And I was actually enthused also. In fact, I think I had joined the Belmont before I joined the ADF, because the Belmont principle really enthused me, and I thought that this is what needs to happen. Parties who all agree on 95% of things need to come together and fight the establishment parties, the legacy parties who have ruined Scotland, Britain, with their rotten policies. Anti-business policies, anti-British policies, and that really needs to be addressed. And I think we need a powerhouse. And I think some people might underestimate the power that we've got here in this grouping of the 7 parties. Is a powerful grouping. It's quite an achievement to bring these together, and I hope that we're able to develop that and move forward. We have Scottish nationalists, we have English nationalists, we have unionists, and we're all coming together because those issues may divide us, and when it comes to the argument, we may be on the opposite side. But at the moment, we've got a really bigger fight to fight against the establishment, who are, I think, ruining the country. Obviously, it's very obvious that that's happening, and they are destroying our way of life, destroying our culture, and it's all deliberate. It's all a plan, and that needs to get sorted out. So we need to have more people. We've spoken to many other parties as well to try and get them involved in this grouping. People are a wee bit nervous about it. They think there's something maybe not right about it, but I think it really is the way forward. We've spent a long time building our identity and getting recognition and gaining support from various quarters, Freedom Alliance and ADF and National Unity Party, and we all have our nuanced differences and nuanced policies, but we agree basically on what's right and what's wrong, and that is the main thing. I do think that there's also a need to have Christian values enter society, but I believe I left business because I couldn't continue in it, and ended up going back to university, did a degree in theology, and not that there was much religion, to be honest, in the degree at Glasgow University. They seem to have stopped teaching real Christianity, but it gave me a lot of insight, gave me an opportunity to take a bit of time out and just get really engrossed in that. And I think that's where the freedom came from with John Knox, and I think that's where the freedom's going to come again. We're going to have a Christian society, a Christian beliefs, and I don't think there's any other way of actually bringing things to the right place. And that would be my advice to everybody to get on that. There's a revival happening. The Church of Scotland is dying. The Church of England is dying. People are leaving in their droves. The churches are empty. The Church of Scotland is selling off their buildings. They're like an estate agent, the amount of buildings that they're selling off. They've given up. They're not interested in bringing revival. But there's other churches, the Baptist church that I'm involved with in Kirkintilloch, have risen from 20 when I started at the church to, I think they've probably got 500 to 1,000 now turning up every Sunday. They've got 7 services. They open 7 different churches all over the country. The other church that I go to attend now is run by Arthur O'Malley, and he stood against COVID. He was one of the 24 churches which took the government to court to say that it was illegal that they could not attend church, that they closed and locked them down. They took it to court and won, and we've got to applaud him for that, for taking that stand against tyranny, basically. Yeah. So that's the way I see the future. I see the future as Belmont style. I hope other parties will join us. There's bigger parties out there. There's no reason why they can't join us. The Advanced Party could be involved. They could be backing us, because they're not standing in local elections. They're not standing in the Welsh elections. They're not standing in Scottish elections. They're not standing in council elections. And that's where we could come in, and they could actually back us. And they've got the support of Elon Musk, so we would like that too. And with that, I'll move on, because I think we've got a lot of speakers to go. And thank you very much, guys.
Any questions for Ken?
Did you say Advance UK are not going to be standing in the local elections in 2026?
That's what they told me. That's what Ben told me. Ted told us.
How does he expect to win a parliamentary seat?
I know.
Well, I wouldn't discourage him, because we're here. Let's use us. Let him use us.
Yeah.
I think that's what we should do. Well, you're lucky, because he never responds to me.
You're a bit rude. Cheeky.
Right, so next on the list is Rob.
Well, being as how I can't get from behind the cameras, go on to your next speaker.
You okay? Yeah.
I'll just make 1 or 2 comments.
Go on.
Basically, Wales is completely screwed. We've got a closed list system coming in for the next 10 of the elections, where basically you vote for the party, not for the candidate. And there's nothing stopping parachuting somebody in after the election. The other thing being Starmer is using Wales as a blueprint, and it's coming to England. That closed list, if you're not careful.
What is the closed list?
Closed list is that basically you have a party, you vote for a party. You don't vote for the candidate. The list is the list of candidates per party. Okay? Mm-hmm. So you might have 4 seats available in a constituency, or however they work it. You'll have however number of Conservative, however number Labour, however number ADF, Freedom Alliance,
so
Sovereign, or whoever.
It's a wee bit like the list system in Scotland.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah.
But they use DeHont, single transferable vote. They use DeHont to divvy the votes up, which is the least democratic. And how it's been set up, and the way the constituencies are in Wales, we in North Wales can't really. Everybody in North Wales could vote not Labour, Plaid, Tory, and Labour would still get in because most of the constituencies are in South Wales, in the mining valleys, and they're traditional Labour.
But it doesn't look like in the run up to that, the next, certainly general election, even for the Welsh elections, that Labour going to get in reform. Like
Not necessarily. The media, the Welsh media are pushing for Plaid Cymru, which are worse than the SNP, to be honest with you. And
not dissimilar.
What's happening is the way it's been set up, Labour and Plaid colluded on this closed list, so that however it works, they will guarantee a coalition of them two.
Yeah.
Reform can get a load of votes. Reform will not get, while they've got a hole in the backside, they will not get a majority that they could work and run that Senate.
Yeah.
And nobody else in there will do a coalition with Reform.
Yeah.
Won't the Tories do a coalition with them?
Maybe not, we don't know. The Tories are not that strong.
I know.
The Tories were actually hated more than Labour.
What, but not now?
In South Wales. Not now.
No.
But South Wales and North Wales are completely different animals.
Yeah. And it's true, isn't it, that there won't be any more by-elections?
Possibly. I mean, as far as Wales is concerned, it's divided. I can get up to Glasgow quicker than I can get to Cardiff.
How are you going to get no by-elections if somebody dies?
Because somebody dies, you just take the next one off the list.
That's right, the list.
Oh, the list is actually going to be after the
list is...
So there's elections every 4 years, and that's it. No by-elections.
You'll have to campaign against that.
Well, that's what we've been trying to do. It was voted in.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And the health system, as Tech has said, it's riddled with corruption. There's been some... Betsy Cadwallader, they had some really creative accounting where if it had been a private company, the finance director would have been in clink. They closed down, they moved, centralised a world-class limb salvage system in Ysbyty Gwynedd. They decided they wanted to move it 30 miles over to Glan Clwyd, which resembles an abattoir more than a hospital.
Oh.
I spent 32 hours in there with my wife in A&E, sat in the waiting room. There were people sitting in chairs in corridors, lying on the floor, and it was horrendous. But really, in Wales, the people need to be activated more. They're just completely apathetic. And as the majority constituencies are in South Wales, they still somehow say they're not going to vote Labour. As soon as the ballot paper's in front of them, or nine inside spinning a grave if I don't vote Labour, so they vote Labour.
Never happened in Philly, though, did it?
No, but we shall see. The other being, of course, I'm a gog, they're taffies. So the worst thing you can do to a North Waleland is call them a taffy. They're a gog.
Is that not that thing of what's that one with the railway?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing with the railway was Crewe, the London North Western Railway had a better service from Llandudno to Manchester in 1910 thanks to the LNWR than they do now with Transport for Wales.
Right, so my turn now, and I'll introduce myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Brian Sylvester. I've been a councillor here in the Crewe and Nantwich area for a long time. I was first elected in 1976, and I've been re-elected every year since then. So next year is my 50th year as a councillor. So welcome. Some sort of record. I can't imagine there's many more in the country than 50 years. It's a long time. I was 24 when I started. Right, so I'm going to talk first of all about Crewe First and how it came about and what we're doing. Crewe First came about because I was a bit bored during lockdown, and I thought, well, what I'll do, I'll form a political party. It's not as easy as you first think. It's pretty difficult dealing with the Electoral Commission. But I got there, and we formed Crewe first, and we stood in by-elections that came up, and we did well. We beat the Greens, we beat the Lib Dems, we beat the Workers' Party, we beat the Independents, but we didn't beat Labour and Tory, but we did well. So we were pleased with the start that we had. And then the big breakthrough came in 2023 when there was an all-out election. Now in Crewe, there's 20, would you believe, 20 town councillors, and there's 10 Cheshire East councillors. Now, Cheshire East is this ginormous big unity council. It carves up half of Cheshire. It's far too big. It covers 450 square miles, and it's been a total disaster since it was formed. But we're stuck with it. And so there's 10 Cheshire East and 20 town council. As a fledgling new party, we put up 30 candidates. 30 candidates. We found 30 candidates, which is quite remarkable because the Tories couldn't find 30 candidates, but we did. And we put the 30 candidates up, and the results were, I still have to pinch myself a little bit about results. Town council results, we got 29% of the vote across the whole town. Crewe's a big town, it's about 60,000 population. And we got 29% of the vote. We got one councillor elected to the town council. I came within 5 votes of getting elected. The councillor that we got elected onto the town council was the first ever non-Labour councillor to get elected. So we showed it can be done. It's hard work. You've got the leaflets over there. You can see that we put out a lot of leaflets, and it's hard work, but it can be done. The electoral system doesn't help you. If we had a fair electoral system in Crewe, at the election in 23, we would have had, let me move this out, we would have had 6 town councillors and 2 borough councillors. But instead we ended up with 1. So the electoral system doesn't help us. But there we are. That's what we're stuck with. But that was an amazing start for the party. Now, in my naivety, I thought, well, that's great. We're now the second party in Crewe. We got 29%. The Tories got 10%, 10, and all the other parties got less than 5. So we're clearly we're clearly the main opposition to the Labour Party in Crewe. And I thought, well, that's great. Now we can get in on to all the media. All the media will come to us and say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But none of it. We are really struggling with the media because the media is stuck in the old framework of saying, right, okay, it's Labour Tory, Labour Tory. And so events come up in Crewe. Instead of coming to me as leader of the Crewe first, they'll go to Tories or to the Labour. And protest as much as I like, which I have done, as you can imagine. I've really taken it down on them. But you're like talking to the wall, really.
What did he almost said? We're the media now. We are the media.
But I'll come to Twitter in a minute. I'll come to Twitter in a minute. So that is the problem that we've got at smaller parties. It's getting our message across in the media because the media don't want to know. BBC, Radio Stoke, and all these sorts. We're covered by Radio Stoke, right? All my press release, I do a press release at least once a week. A press release goes out. Do they ever print any? No, not one. And the only time that this is funny, but the only time that we really got some media coverage, and this is in the national media, in the Crewe Town Centre, and Simon will know this, and Crewe Town Centre, the stupid council, they bought this big block of shops called the Royal Arcade, and perfectly good block of shops with tenants in there, and all the shops were open and they were doing well, all the rest of it. In their wisdom, they knocked the shops down and said, right, we're going to have a brand new shopping centre, and we're going to build on the land we demolished. So you can guess what happened. They demolished the land, and nothing happened, and it's still nothing's happened. Years and years later, we've just got a bomb site in the centre of Crewe. And so I put out a leaflet. I thought to myself, well, what is the most famous bomb site in the world ever? I thought, well, it's Hiroshima, right? So I put a leaflet out, and I've got a leaflet here, right? Comparing, right, Crewe Town Centre with Hiroshima. And actually, when you look at the photos, there's not a lot of difference. It's not. Those famous pictures of Hiroshima with just a bell tower standing, Well, here we just had the old bus station stand. That was it. That was it. Now that got into all the national media, all the Sun, Mail, the lot, right? But the only reason they were doing that, I think, well, it's going to put us, Crew First, in a bad light, right? That's why they were doing it. So how outrageous? How can you possibly compare it with the Washington? But it didn't actually, because as I said, the results were quite more than good. They were very good in the elections, right? So it didn't backfire at all. It was very positive. But it just shows you that at times you almost have to go to the extreme to get publicity. You shouldn't have to do that, should you? Really? It is very frustrating. So that's where we are. I stood in the general election last year. Obviously, as Crew First, I couldn't stand in Crewe and Nantwich as Crew First. So with the Electoral Commission, you are allowed to register up to about, I think, 10 different names, provided you've got your name in the title. So what I stood as is Crew First, Crewe Nantwich, putting Crewe Nantwich first. So I got away with that. And the idea of standing in the general election was that obviously I didn't expect to win, not at all. But it was an opportunity to get the leaflets over there. You can see the leaflet. Put out a big leaflet to every house. There's 65,000 voters in Crewe and Nantwich. So we got a leaflet delivered free by the post office to every house from Crewe and Nantwich first. So that's a great opportunity which we took. And as the results turned out, we did okay. We've got just under 600 votes. We beat the Workers' Party, we beat the Looney Party, and so we did okay. It was a good experience. And there was 3 hustings that I attended and spoke at the hustings, that in itself was a great experience. But one thing that did surprise me during that election, they had the hustings at Nantwich in St Mary's Church in Nantwich. Anybody who knows this church, it's a magnificent church in Nantwich, in the centre of the town, and a big church. I turned up there, and the place was packed. It shows there is an interest in politics. The place was packed, and I was really impressed with that. And again, the hustings allowed us to get our message across. So then, just turning back to the media. So with the ordinary media, it's virtually hopeless. We've got one local one. It's like an online one. It's called itself Crew Nub. You sometimes might get 1 or 2 things in that, possibly, but that's it. Nothing else. So thank goodness for social media. And as some of you know, I'm very active on social media. So one piece of good news for you, which surprises me, I'm shocked to learn it myself actually, but in the last 28 days, on my main Facebook page, in 28 days, I had 500,000 views. 500,000 views. And the only reason I can think that that's really taken off, it's just gone straight over that, is that what Facebook now do, and those who use Facebook will know this, is that when you actually post something, you're allowed to post to about 9 different groups as well, right? And groups that you follow. And obviously I follow groups who are of the same mind as myself, right? And so I do. I post it to 9 different ones every time. And that's the only reason. I haven't changed what I'm putting out. My stuff is, I keep ploughing it out. So I haven't changed the style of it at all, or the content of it. So that's the only reason I can think of. But I don't know whether anybody else has had the same experience on Facebook, but that is staggering. And just think of that, 500,000 in a month, less than a month. That's more than some of these channels on TV get. It's just incredible. So it's one to ponder if you're on Facebook, is to look at that and see whether you can get more followers and more views on that. On Twitter, you mentioned about Twitter. It's interesting on Twitter. I've got about 46,000 followers on Twitter, and I was saying to Tech earlier. In the old days, I used to get like 100 more followers every week, roughly on average. But now, for the last year, it just stayed where it is. In fact, it's gone from 46,000 to 47, then down a bit, then up a bit, then down a bit, and up a bit. So I can only think that I'm being shadow banned. I can only think that it's going to be shadow banned.
You've been shadow banned.
Yeah. So what you can do about that, I don't know. You can complain to Elon and all the rest of it, but it's probably do know.
I think there has to be, and I know that a number of the parties are freedom parties. There has to be legislation brought in to make it a criminal offence to do that.
Well, that'd be good, yeah.
Because it's a form of harassment. B, it's a form of suppression as well. So it's suppressing the alternative media.
But I'm talking to Tech about it. Is Tech account, is the Treasury account, and you've got about 60,000, haven't you? Yeah. And you get about
up and down.
yeah, and you get about 400 or 500 times every time you post. You get 400 or 500 views. Right. I've got 46,000 followers on Twitter, and every time I get 200, 250. Sometimes you get a lot more if it's a really, really good one. But
you need reposts, don't you, on Twitter?
Sorry?
You need it to be reposted by...
Yeah, I repost my own stuff.
Can I just tell you a quick thing? Somebody clipped a minute of me. I did a sort of guerrilla style interview with Sarwar, who's the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland. Have you seen it?
No, I know so.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
Have you seen it, mate? Yeah. So I did the thing. One of the guys, now I wasn't getting any traction on my X page, just in connection with what you were saying. Somebody took it, clipped it, made a minute of it, me saying certain things to Sarwar.
Yeah.
It's a guy called Harry Krishna. It blew up to 250,000 views.
Really?
Yeah.
Then Basil the Great put it up, he got 250,000 views as well. Then Peter Lloyd put it up, exact same clip, he got about 150,000.
Yeah.
And then Tommy Robinson put it up, and he got 350,000. So there was somebody else, I missed out somebody though, there was somebody else.
Elon Musk.
No, no, I think a lot more than that. But the traction I got off other people doing it, which what you're saying about the shadow banning, that would have got it. I would not have got that volume on my own, even though it was me that did it, even on my own X page.
Yeah.
And I've got a million. I think somebody else got 250,000 views. Can't remember who it was. And they've it was David Atherton. So he got another 250,000. So there's been about 1 million views. And I would never have got that on my X page had the other accounts not actually done it.
Just to put it in a different way, what I was saying earlier, on my Twitter, I say I've got about 46,000 to get 200 views. On my Twitter, if I look at how many views I've had on Twitter in the last 28 days, right, and these figures are all available, right, it's about 70,000. So compare 70,000 with 500,000. Right, on Facebook. On Twitter I've got 46,000 followers, on Facebook I've got 6,000 followers. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any, and they're the same posts, they're not different posts, they're the same actual word for word posts, the same ones, yeah.
Perhaps if you put an image of Hiroshima now.
If you put an image of Hiroshima, the Online Safety Act will kick in and Ofcom will have it to Zapped. What's happening now? If Tech posts something that's controversial, I try to repost it, it won't let me. It tells me you have reached your daily limit.
Yeah.
And it depends on keywords. If you try to post something that's got certain keywords in it, it'll not let you post that either. But if you did delete the term NHS off something, you post it. The algorithm is being very selective and it needs sorting.
But on my Facebook, despite the fact that I've got 500,000, which is remarkable, there is would you believe it, a restriction on it. And why is there a restriction on it? Because they sent me a message saying we're going to restrict your Facebook account because you put this post out. We say deleted, and you can guess what it was. It's pure truth about the net zero. Saying net zero is a sham, it's a fraud, and we shouldn't do anything about it. If you put that on Facebook, they say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, no. Take it off altogether and restrict your account.
Yeah.
So they're judge and jury over the truth, and the person telling the truth is me, not them, isn't it? You know, it's just crazy. And then on the other accounts, like with TikTok and Instagram and things, again, on TikTok, I've got 6,000 followers on TikTok, and I'll get around about 700 views each time, 700 compared to 200 with Twitter, and with Instagram we've got about 3,000 followers, and I get about 200 to 300. It's similar to Twitter, but you know. So it shows you that in terms of the contrast of social media, and the other thing about Twitter, and anybody else experienced this, I had the Crew First Twitter account, and for some odd, obscure reason, I was denied access to it. I don't know what's happened to that. And like most of these organisations, you can't get to speak to a human being. You know, you're talking to these AI people all the while, aren't you? And so again, I complained bitterly to Twitter and saying, you know, please let me have my account back. I was paying, you know, the additional to get the blue tick on my Crew First. You know, £100 a year. It's worth it if you can use it, but they won't let me use it. So obviously I'm not paying. So now I've formed a different Twitter account, which is putting Crew and Navigation first. But again, you wonder what on earth is going on in those situations. Let me turn to another issue which I think might be of interest. Particularly, I'm not sure how this relates to Scotland and Wales, but in England, and I have raised it with colleagues before, but it's worth raising again, is that in Cheshire East, there's 107 town and parish councils. 107, right? Amazing. When it comes to the election in 2023, when there was an election, for all those parish and town councils, you can guess how many actually had an election. Around 80% had no elections. Why? There wasn't enough candidates. Not enough candidates. 80% had no elections at all, right? So people just got in unopposed, right? So what happens then? There's vacancies on these parish and town councils, and when a vacancy occurs, obviously the parish town council have to advertise and say there's a vacancy, and anybody who wants to call an election can call an election. Again, obviously for obvious reasons, nobody does, and so these vacancies just pile up. There's literally hundreds of vacancies for parish councillors in Cheshire East. Across the country, it must be hundreds of thousands. It really is unbelievable. And Simon is standing at the back there. Simon was one of our candidates in Crewe, a very good candidate for us. And after the elections in 23...
I'd just like to say, best council involved.
He's very modest, Simon. He's very shy and retired. So after the elections in 23, I said to him, look, I'm on Leighton Parish. Leighton is just over the road virtually, Leighton Parish. It's a big parish, I think it's the biggest in Cheshire East, so it's a big parish. And I'm on my second term on that parish. But they got vacancies. I said to Simon, well, why don't you apply? Which he did. He just sent an email to the clerk and said, I wish to be a parish councillor. He said, oh great, okay, come on to the next meeting. He came along, he told him why he wants to be a parish councillor, and said, all in favour, right, Simon, you're a councillor. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Now, I don't know how... Sorry?
It didn't cost me a penny.
No! and he's a very good councillor. But it's so simple to do, and most people don't even realise it's there. Councils should be required by law to advertise these vacancies. They don't.
Yeah.
Because people don't know that they're there, they don't know they can apply, they don't know they can become a councillor. They think, oh, I have to stand for election. You don't even have to stand for election, you just get co-opted. You know? So it is a great opportunity if parties want to get councillors, because one of the criteria you use to judge whether a party is doing well is how many councillors have you got? Who you got elected? Right? That's one of the criteria, obvious criteria. And it's so easy. and again, you don't have to live in the parish. I don't live in Leighton. Simon doesn't live in Leighton, but we're Leighton Parish Councillors. Why? Because 3 miles, if you live within 3 miles of the boundary, or work within 3 miles, or even own land or property within 3 miles, you can stand.
Yeah.
Right? So it's so easy. So I would certainly ask you to consider that, because it's a way to get in councillors, and that's one of the things that we should be about. What's the situation in Scotland and Wales? Is it
Can co-opt.
Sorry?
Your parish council will be a community or town council
Yeah.
in Wales, and yes, co-option is available.
Right, is it?
In a county council, say there are 4 available seats for some ward. If only 2 stand, of the 4, 2 will automatically get a seat, and they might co-opt the other 2.
Yeah. And so in Wales, in Wales, can they co-opt?
Yeah, in Wales they co-opt a town and community. For
Yeah.
that,
Right. Okay, good. So that is an opportunity for people to consider. So finally, in terms of Belmont, why am I here? Why is Crew First here? It's because believe in working together. As been said already, no need to repeat, is we don't all agree on everything, never will agree on everything, but we agree on the basics, we agree on 6 principles, which is great, we work together, and we will try not to stand against each other where possible. All makes good sense. And how many times have you heard people say, oh, these political parties, we should start fighting amongst each other and warmongering among themselves? Well, why not just get together and work together? Well, here we are. We're here in Crewe working together, aren't we? And so it can be done. I understand there's about 370 political parties registered in the Electoral Commission, so there's a way to go. but this is a start, isn't it? It's a start. And so I'm very pleased to join Crewe First with the Belmont, and I'm very pleased to do that, and I'm really delighted with the way this has worked out today, and it's gone really well. It's very interesting. Thank you very much. So I'll take any questions if there's any questions.
Right, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you stand as a parish councillor or town councillor, do you typically have to give your political party or your political affiliation?
No. I'm a parish councillor for Leighton, right? When I stood, and Leighton's not in Crewe, obviously, and so I couldn't stand as putting Crewe first. But one of the interesting things about parishes and towns, I didn't realise this until relatively recently, is that you're allowed 6 words to go on the ballot paper, right? And with parish and town, you can put whatever 6 words you want. Any words you want, as long as they're not libelous or racialist or whatever. But 6 words. So I think from memory, I'd put in local residents first, something like that. Something very similar to what the name I've got here in Crewe. So I stood. Most people stand at the parish and town as independents and don't put any name down at all, right? Again, there's nothing to stop it. Really, if you're putting forward to be co-opted onto a parish council, town council, you don't have to say that you're a member of a certain party. Just say I'm independent. Get onto the council. You're there for 4 years, 3 years, whatever the term is left for you to serve, and then a few months in, you say, "Oh, by the way, I'm now Crewe First," and you can't do a damn thing about it. If you want to change your party, you can change your party, and so that would be the way to go forward. So it opens up lots of opportunities. This does.
Well, I'm Pat McGuinness, the Treasurer of the National Housing Party. I stand in local elections, and this is the reason we started our party. Myself and John Lawrence, with great help of Paul Rimmer and Stephanie Parker as well. And it's all about local elections. So I'm just going to give you a brief update on my election campaign. I stood in 2022 and got a very good vote, and I didn't plan to stand again, but the response I got on the doorstep was so good that I decided that I could potentially win this seat if I put a solid campaign in. So I started campaigning in 2023. The election is in 2026. And so I'm two years and 6 months into the campaign. I've been going out religiously every single week, twice a week, each time for 2 hours. So that's 4 hours canvassing every single week. And I've delivered 5 different leaflets. So I did my first leaflet in 2022, which was quite controversial, but I got a good response. And when I decided that I was going to go for it, it took me a year to decide whether I was going to stand in my own area, because I wasn't planning on doing it because I live in a Labour stronghold, and Keir Starmer is actually my MP. So if I do win, you know, which is possible, I'm not going to say I am going to win, but it is possible. You know, if I do, it could be quite a big headline. Yeah. So when I made the decision that I was going to go for it, I said, right, I'm going to have to think doing a leaflet. So I thought I'll do a thank you leaflet for the people who voted me in 2022. So I've done a thank you leaflet, kind of reinforced the stuff I was campaigning about. They're closing a lot of roads in London and other places in the country. They're called LTNs, low traffic neighbourhood schemes. But the main thing with our campaign is housing and immigration. And you know, we're not shy to say we want to completely stop permanent settlement immigration and no more refugees for citizenship. And so that's the main thing, because we're the National Housing Party. So I did a thank you leaflet. You know, thank you to everyone who voted for me. And every single leaflet I've said that I'm a Christian. We want to stop permanent settlement immigration, and we want to stop accepting refugees for citizenship. And I've put a lot of statistics in there. Well, on my second leaflet, I put a story in there of one of my neighbours who lives in the block of flats where I live, and he basically slept on his mum's sofa for 30 years and phoned up Camden Council, can you get me a flat? No, we haven't got any. Can you put me on a waiting list? No. And on my travels, door knocking, I've heard this story so many times. And as we all know, we're being flooded with refugees, and they're being given priority. So that's the second leaflet. The third leaflet, I've just done our warm-up leaflet, which is here. If anyone wants one of those, that's there. And that's my newsletter there, if anyone wants a copy of that. So the third leaflet was the warm-up leaflet, what we use around the country whenever we stand. We've stood in various places, Oldham, South Gloucestershire, Rugby, and I've got a few other campaigns going on. So that was my third leaflet, and then I decided to do a newsletter, which is there, that one. That was my newsletter, and then the fifth leaflet will be my final leaflet, which I've more or less prepared already. So by the time we get to the election, my electorate would have had 5 different leaflets, and as I said, I've said those things on every single one, and you know, the response I'm getting on the doorstep is pretty good. I spoke to about 1,500 people, and I'm getting a very, very good response. And you know, getting a few people not happy about my campaign, because you know, it's quite a lefty area in certain places. But on the council estates, which is split between English and Muslim, I'd say, most of these people are voting for me because they're all overcrowded. Like I say, that story, I hear that story all the time. They can't go. They're not allowing them to go on the waiting list. So it's going very well. I mean, a few months ago, they published in the local newspaper that the Labour Party they're having trouble finding enough candidates. Can you believe that? This is unprecedented. Yeah, they need 55 candidates in Camden, and they said they can only find 48. And two of the candidates in my ward, because there's 3 positions up for election, 2 of them they've thrown a towel in, and I think personally, one of them who is of Somalian descent, and he doesn't like me, and got a little bit of a well, there was a bit of a competitive thing going on, but I think he's now bottled it because of my relentless door knocking campaign, 2.5 years so far. They're getting messages all the time, this guy keeps knocking on the door, blah blah blah, and they're probably saying to him, Labour are probably saying, hey, you better get out and knock on doors. But the Labour Party can't go knocking on doors
No.
because they'll be told to you know what. So he's decided to throw the towel in. And another one as well. So there's 3 candidates usually win every single time. 2 of them have. So the latest is, because they think my ward is a safe seat, it's Holborn and Covent Garden ward in the south of Camden. The leader of Camden Council, he's decided to replace one of these 2 councillors because they think it's a safe seat. But as you know, I've spoken to a lot of you before I spoke. I'm getting a very good response on a doorstep. So, you know, I think they could be in for a shock. What a dream election for me would be is Liberal Democrats stand 3 candidates, the Green Party stand 3 candidates, and that's going to split the Labour vote. Obviously, you've got Reform there. You know, I'd rather them not stand, but they're going to be there. And the big question is, will they have 1 candidate or 3 candidates? If they only have 1 candidate, I'm going to have a very, very good chance of winning. And, you know, in Jesus' name, this could happen. You never know. And that's what I do. I pray to win. You know, I've said on every leaflet I'm a Christian nationalist. And the surprise, I've learnt so much from this campaign. The Muslims, they want a Christian patriotic nationalist ruling over them. They don't want an atheist Labour Party councillor. They don't want it. They're more than happy to support a Christian than an atheist. And you know, there's all different communities in my ward, but I'm getting such a good response. I've got a very good chance of winning. So yeah, I've done this newsletter, which is quite a big, in-depth newsletter of the main things I'm campaigning on. And there's 4 main things really. And I say Camden People First for housing. You know, they shouldn't be allowing newly arrived refugees to be housed anymore. They made Camden a refugee borough sanctuary in 2023 when we got 30,000 people on the council house waiting list. And I put all that in here. There's 2 issues there with the road closures and the parking spaces, and there's another big issue of street drug use in Covent Garden. There's people taking crack and heroin outside people's front doors, basically. It's that bad. So my solution is to that, about the drug problem, because it's been going on for 30 years around there, and I've seen it in my own eyes, people doing it on the streets, I've seen the dealing, and I basically said, they can't solve this problem. The only solution is to give an automatic 4-week prison sentence for anyone doing it openly on the street. So next time they get their drugs, they'll think twice about doing it. Like it's just chaos and anarchy around there now, and they need a zero tolerance to sort this problem out. And so I started a petition for that. I mean, let's get real. The police are probably not going to implement that, but it gives me a chance to knock on the door again, to speak to the same people again. So you've got to think of something, a new thing, so you can go and knock on that door again to speak to them again. Because a lot of the people said they're going to vote for me. They're going to. Well, I know they have already, because some of them they have forgotten. So that's why you've got to find multiple things to keep knocking. Best one is a new leaflet. You do a new leaflet, go and knock on the door. Hello, did you get my last leaflet? No. Oh, I've got it here. So and just quickly go through it. And you know, I'm a big believer in local elections. That's the only way we're going to make a difference. And yeah, so things are going really well, and yeah, so there's some leaflets there if anyone's interested in my campaign. And who knows, next time, because the election's coming up next May, only 6 months to go. So get out there door knocking, guys, and yeah, that's it really. Thanks a lot.
Well done. Any questions of Pat?
Yeah. Can you buy a get back there.
Any questions of Pat?
So my friend's son died, and he died of an OD. So I grew up with him. So what you're talking about drugs is relative. I've lost a number of friends to drugs. One of the things they're doing in Scotland is consumption rooms, and which makes it easier to take drugs. But I would have suggested that direct interventions, where rather than going to prison, you get a secured accommodation where you're basically prohibited from taking drugs for, say, 3 months, where you will, by the 3 months' time, you will be over or off your addiction. That will cost money, but I would say that in the longer term, if you get, in America it's called an intervention, where your family members or people come and say, you should try and come off this, and by securing or giving opportunity for a secured location where you'll be prohibited for taking or doing compulsive behavioural patterns until you break the habit. They may relapse, but they could also have group counselling like NA as well on the back of that. But after 3 months, usually the habit would be broken. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's one thing I didn't mention. I was on heroin myself, and I'm 20 years clean from heroin.
Well
I know the game inside out, and our policy actually for long term is to decriminalise all drugs. That's not selling it in shops, but have government doctors controlling it with prescription only. Because what people got to understand is there's most of these junkies, they don't want to stop, and what is the point of it being illegal? I mean, if I wanted it now in London, I can go and get it. So
well, you'll probably understand that when you're in the middle of your addiction, you're not really thinking about anything else, but if you get an intervention and then in a secured location for a period of time, it can break the addiction. And you can also use NA and group counselling to help the breaking of that addiction. But when you're actually in the throes of the addiction, you don't really, it's very difficult to break it, sometimes by yourself, as you probably know.
Well, I don't want to give a life story, but I was practically on the heroin for about 9 years. 7 years of that time, I didn't want to stop. And all the ducking and diving and all that, the excitement, it was a big attraction for it, and it prolongs it longer. Because the ultimate thing what made me stop in the end, it gets boring. You get bored of it, you can't just stop it, and it's very difficult to stop, but it gradually gets worse and worse and worse. But like I said, there's some, like in my ward, some people, they don't want to sign my thing about the 4-week thing, and I say, look, that 4 weeks in prison for these people, that might be the kickstart they need to get off the gear and then go to a rehab. But there's a large proportion of them who don't want to stop.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, that's why it would be like an intervention where rather than go to prison to stop it, you would go to a secure unit, which may be a bit softer than the prison, but would actually, you wouldn't be interacting with the public, and you'd be forced to stop for that 3 months or whatever it would be.
Well, and also, if they did decriminalise it, the amount of money they would save from police, customs, the courts, they could pump that money into rehabilitation for the people who do want to stop. And you know, and in our policy we say, well, at least give it a try for 4 years, and if there's no results, we go back to what we've got now. In America, they tried to put harsher sentences on people. They've ended up with 1 million people in prison because there's a lot of people who recreationally use drugs and they just don't want to stop. So, you know, I'm not advising people to do drugs. I completely say don't do it. But there was something I forgot to say in my speech actually, just about our party, and we've got about 35 policies on our website, and these are 12 of the ones that kind of mean quite a lot to us. So the first one, stop permanent settlement immigration, deport all illegals, stop accepting refugees for citizenship, exit the UN Refugee Convention. We're a Christian nationalist party, and we kind of would like to encourage 1/3 of all schools in a borough to become Christian. And also we've just released a new policy of banning abortion. We've estimated that because of abortion since 1967, we've probably lost about 20 million Indigenous British people. But ban foreign ownership of land and property in the UK, including our football clubs. You know, we're a Christian British nationalist party. We believe in Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Reject Zionism and foreign interest groups like Friends of Israel groups in our political parties. We want to nationalise gas, electric and water and the national rail system. Anti-globalist, we want to leave NATO, UN, IMF, WEF and WHO. And we're pushing a message of rejecting politically correct language. Don't validate words like racist, homophobic, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic and the rest of them. Scrap the Equalities Act and all hate crime legislation. We've got a white British group identity policy, which would make it legal, because a lot of people don't realise that what they've done is they've made our group identity illegal, the indigenous population. So you can't open up a charity or a business or a political party specifically for white British people. And in our policy it clearly says that, you know, black people should have the right to do that as well, and that's what you call a free society. Yeah, last one is we've got a policy to ban foreign religious buildings, any further foreign religious buildings to be built, including mosques, Sikh and Hindu temples and synagogues. So that's what we're about. We are the National Housing Party.
Next on is Russell. Thank you, Russell. Russell is from the Populist Party.
Unfortunately, I've had to. I'm talking about why Belmont and not Reform UK. So I've got to have quite a few bits here because there's a lot to say about Mr. Farage. So I'll just read off this. So many will be looking at Reform UK and placing their hope in Nigel Farage to deliver and reverse decades of decline. But what does Reform offer that isn't simply what the Tories stood for in the 1980s? Well, I look at the party and all I see is defections from the Conservative Party, a rebranded version of the Tories. I note that people who were in nationalist parties, and Pat will actually agree with me on this one, in the past, such as the BNP, the National Front, or any offshoots of these parties, which would include the Third Way Party, which I was a member of, are actually prescribed for joining Reform. Now, I don't actually think there is such a prescribed list in the Labour Party even, or even in the Conservatives. But Reform appears to operate that way. Now, is this to appease the Liberal left? Well, even though they'll still hate Reform, regardless. Or is it to keep out those who backed Trumpian-style tariffs and who might deviate from the uniparty line of support for NATO and Israel? And I think it probably is. Nigel Farage was lauded as the hero of Brexit in 2016, and that's the core of his appeal. In the 2016 referendum, we were only given two bad choices. One, stay in the EU and build a fortress Europe to keep out cheap labour from poor countries outside the EU, but move towards a federal Europe. And two, leave the EU and open up a global race to the bottom with low wages everywhere, while supposedly being a free nation. The true Brexit choice is no foreign laws governing us, plus protecting British jobs and factories from cheap goods made in places like China, and that was not even on the table. The official Leave campaign was dreadful. Brexit the movie, featuring Daniel Hannan and many other neo-liberals, was a turn-off for those who supported or opposed rampant free market factorism and supported protectionism. There was a Lexit movie for those who backed left exit based on protectionism, but few saw it. Grassroots Out, led by Farage, won the referendum. Not the official campaign, which was the Vote Leave. That was a disaster. That was Boris. In fact, I think it was about two weeks into the referendum, and they were talking about really that we were going to lose because of Boris Johnson, and then obviously Farage popped up and saved the day, inverted commas. So thus the Farage persona was created. Now, in the following years, we've seen him go from hero to zero in the eyes of those who are nationalists. Not just the prescribed list, but also his endorsement of Henry Bolton for UKIP leader, and then his wanton disruption of UKIP by abandoning Gerard Batten for merely seeking advice on tackling Islamism from Tommy Robinson. While we're on that issue, check out Farage's stance on Islamism, which is very much a fatalistic line. Richard Tice's quote, "I'll be long gone by then," might sum it up. UKIP never recovered. Farage formed the Brexit Party and won the final European elections. Many of us expected him to contest Tory seats and build upon his wins. Instead, he stood aside for them, despite Labour being led by Jeremy Corbyn, who had been persuaded to propose a second referendum on the EU. As if Corbyn wasn't enough to frighten Middle England. And after all, he did increase their seats in 2017.
his pledge to ignore the referendum was enough to stop him. But Farage stood down in all these Tory seats, fearing a Labour victory that was never ever going to happen. If he'd have stood down in just Labour seats and contested the Tory ones, we might have seen Brexit Party MPs elected in 2019, but that's conjecture. Then, with the Johnson government doing nothing to assure us that EU laws would be looked at to see if they needed amending, and nothing to remove VAT on products and so forth, we were then hit with COVID issue. And Nigel's response was to suggest that Tony Blair, of all people, should be the vaccine czar. As ever, his cultists simply said, "Oh, don't take that seriously, that's just Nigel, he's just jesting, he's playing with you." And the lockdowns and the vaccine, they did so much harm, both on an economic and personal level, and I actually lost friends over this because, and even family members weren't talking to me, so I feel it quite strongly. Some people have actually died quite prematurely just as a result of this, and so I remember them. And families were ripped apart, early deaths, and the only person who was going to address it was Andrew Bridgen. He was the only MP in Parliament, so I think he's very good. But Farage stayed curiously silent. Several of the Belmont parties arose as a direct a result of this conflict. And so Farage is Farage a gifted politician who tests the water before dipping in his toe, or is he a super strategist? Well, based on these events, I would say no. Certainly in the case of Corbyn in 2019, who badly misjudged, and his apparent support unrequited for the Tories in the same election. So could I achieve what he achieved? Well, probably not. But would I make the same blunders? Certainly not. We have to remember that Farageism twists and turns like a snake, and it blows with the wind. It is not people-based populism. In fact, he even denies being a populist, and that was on a recent interview, I think about 6 months ago. He's taking in millions of red wall voters, people who ought to be, to use David Goodhart's phrase, somewhere voters, but they're really voting for an anywhere party. These are people who are left of centre on economics and socially conservative. These people are voting for a party that's evolving into all they opposed, a neoliberal party that attracts the likes of no jab, no job Charlie Mullins. And the Belmont Accord is quite different. We do not like the unique selling point that the jargon that he uses, only Reform UK will stop the boats, only this, only that, when there are other people, other parties who not only would stop the boats but do far more. It is crass and fake marketing language. And we don't like the razzmatazz of the Reform UK promotion, the American style conferences. Big money donors expect something in return for their buns, because he who pays the piper calls the tune. I think we can say that Zia Youssef is a very good example of that. He just came from nowhere. He gave them £200,000, and then suddenly he's a chairman, basically a deputy leader, and probably leader in waiting, if we're honest about it. So they talk tough and then they apologise, like Sarah Poachin's valid comments on advertisers that exclude white people, only to back down when the Liberal vultures swarm in. We prefer a talk tough and stand by your words culture. And that leads to the merry-go-round of councillors due to Reform UK clamping down on the honest ones, who speak the truth about issues of concern, only to be discarded to appease people who hate the party anyway. And so, to conclude, their involvement in foreign policy, be it Richard Tice visiting Ukraine to support tin pot dictator Zelensky, or the myriad of I stand by Israel statements by Reform UK MPs on social media, despite the war in the region being nothing to do with us. Many, if not most, Belmont parties see the politics, the geopolitics, for what it is. It's theatre, corporate manipulation, money power and international finance decides who Britain backs and who our troops die for. Perhaps it was always so. I'll leave you to ponder that. Anyway, so will Belmont eventually become one party? Well, we don't know yet at that moment. We're not at that stage. This is where we are at this stage. But more parties are joining each year, and I think the National Distributors Party will be the next party to join, if I have my way, because I think they're very good, up and coming. And so I just hope that this will be an expanding group, and I'm sure it will be. That's all positive, certainly more positive than the We one. We will not speak to any other party's position of Reform UK. Advance UK is in its early stages, mimicking all those concerns that Ben Habib had about Reform UK. He said he wouldn't do that, and now he's not talking to us. I will badger him. I will keep badgering him on X as much as I can. Every time I will put something on there saying, join the Belmont group. Why haven't you? He'll never respond to me, and he never will. He's got this electoral college that they've set up for the party, and this is a joke, because they get elected by the members, and then those people vote for Ben Habib or whoever, and they get elected in tenths. So you've got 10 of them, I believe it's 10, and you get rid of one year, and another one comes in. So by the time you take you about, I would say, 7 years to actually go around that full circle to get a full, maybe a majority of people who want to change. So the difference between us is that we are authentic and they are not, and that's really what I want to say. Any questions about that?
No questions? Okay. Well, thanks again. Right, Catherine is next, the leader of the Freedom Alliance.
Right, so most of you do know me, but if you don't, I'm Catherine Evans, leader of Freedom Alliance. I've been leader for 2.5 years. So yeah, I'll crack on. Freedom Alliance came into being as a direct reaction to the government's COVID response. As lockdowns were imposed, lobby groups and grassroots movements arose, but there was no political party fighting to protect our freedoms and civil liberties at that time. Freedom Alliance formed ideologically as the political wing of the freedom movement. We grew rapidly and stood many candidates at local and by-elections. Based on a strong manifesto rooted in freedom and liberty, we have since expanded our areas of policy and meet all arising issues with the same enthusiasm and professionalism. From tackling net zero madness to the war on motorists to digital ID, we fight all government and corporate overreach into our lives, and at the same time we push for a country with governance of our own creation, less taxation, more sovereignty, less rules. When we look at the bigger picture, what do we really want? We want politicians that are not swayed by the power of mega corporations. We want MPs that cannot be bought, manipulated, silenced. We want a government to be a servant of the people. We want a government governed by the people, not foreign power, not wealthy businessmen, not career politicians, not corruption. In essence, what we want is the uni party out. I think we'll all agree on that. It's a grand vision shared by so many, but we must develop tactics to make it a reality. Our strategy has to be standing successful candidates of our own to replace them. Freedom Alliance recognises our differences, our strengths and weaknesses are from those currently in office. And we have recognised for a while that there are other parties, yourselves, operating in a similar vein with similar goals. If we are to change anything about the system we live under, we have to start with changing ourselves. How we manage ourselves, how we interact, how we plan. We cannot keep following the same prescribed course, or we risk ending up becoming that we wish to remove. Looking at the mainstream parties and how they behave, we see finger pointing, blame, distrust, divisiveness, hostility, polarisation, strategic manoeuvres and ideological conflict. This is the norm. Much of it is exaggerated and amplified by the media. Much of it spills over to the population and how they see their political opponents. More widely, it informs social and cultural behaviour in the public arena. It's time to break the mould. It's time to work together.
Yeah.
This is why we've come together with you other smaller parties. We must have a strategy with aligned tactics to streamline our path to our common goal. The path is treacherous, and with enough other obstacles without colliding and crashing into each other along the way. I would argue it's incumbent on any party to align, devise tactics and execute them together to maximise our chances of success, and I will encourage more parties and individuals to join us. Because as Belmont partners, we can do just that. One such tactic, as we've identified from early on, is how we approach local and general elections, and parish council ones. We should not be standing candidates in elections against those who are on the same page as us, but we can go further than that to support all of the candidates amongst us as a cross-party effort. A win for one is a win for all.
Yeah.
You see, whilst we have come together and signed a document to say that we will collaborate together, and we have a website to show what our broad principles are, the work doesn't stop there. We came together with the other Belmont members to find the steps and actions needed to put a strategy into motion. For any of us to win seats, we all need to grow as individuals, as parties, and as a collective. Just as a marriage is not a wedding day or a civil contract, our time together is to nurture, bring out the best in ourselves and each other, and take advantage of this great journey we are on together and flourish. We get out what we put in. The Belmont Accord, it will not carry us. It will not do the work for us. It is the sum of our efforts. And when the Belmont Accord thrives, we all thrive. And when we become stronger, we are closer to achieving our goal. Please remember, building the Belmont Group itself is a tactic to support the overall goal. It is vital we remain focused. Everything we do is with the aim of supporting our primary objective, getting rid of the uniparty. Like a military operation, for this is a battle for how we live our lives. There needs to be clear objectives, a doctrine, and a plan of action to execute. Core components of a military operation include intelligence and situational analysis. This is creating a comprehensive understanding of the situation, learning about everything from the terrain to who the enemy is and who our friendly forces are. From this, a detailed plan is formed, identifying problems, tactics, options, and action. For us, this can be interpreted in different ways. Where is the terrain? I would argue it's inside people's minds. It is the battle for votes, and votes are thoughts. Thoughts are complex, shaped by emotions, economic, social and cultural factors, traditional voting practices, habits and internal strategies of an individual. Who is the enemy? The uniparty. That being the mainstream parties and all vested interests in their success. This is the current government and their supporters, but is also the larger corporate entities, market forces and shadowy elites who have much riding on the need for a malleable government. Who are the friendly units? Well, everyone in this room. But it is also other small parties or individuals who are not in the Belmont Group. It can be social media influencers, lobby groups, grassroots groups, other media channels, the wider freedom movement, the public, and even people in other countries going through similar situations with their government. It could be current MPs or councillors, civil servants, businesses, and many more that are in agreement on our main principal concerns. Forming a detailed plan for us needs to stay firmly in the realm of what is possible and real. This is not a place for grand ideas, hopes and ideals. Yes, when we plan, we must challenge ourselves, push the boundaries, think outside the box, but it is important that we are realistic and maximise what we have to our best advantage. We must identify our resources, our strengths and weaknesses, and be honest with ourselves and each other about what is working and what isn't. It's not for me to tell you what to do. This is a joint effort with input from everybody here. This is why we must get round the table, meet regularly, build relationships and collaboration across the board. We must drive innovation, create new methods, identify new tactics and ideas to solve our problems and bring greater value to our collective efforts. There is much planning to be done. Through this process, we can share skills, knowledge, experience, resources. For some examples of skills, some of us are better at IT and social media. We can teach and learn from others' knowledge response here. Experiences of campaigning methods and resources can be shared to help minimise exerting efforts unnecessarily, like from yourself, Brian, and from Pat McGuinness, that we've heard already today. We can utilise our memberships to support each other's candidates, share leaflets like we've brought along today, template letters and other materials for economies of scale. Networking, sharing what we are up to with others who will support us as a unit and individually. Introducing contacts to each other and growing our pool of collaborators and partners. We can engage even in developing regional cross-party branches. The public want and need to see us working together. We can set up events and attend events as a collective or as individuals, invite each other to our own events. Some other examples are attending public rallies, such as the No to Digital ID that we've heard about. Visibly supporting other lobby groups on the same page as us. Speaking at each other's conferences. Launching joint social media campaigns. Speaking on podcasts and news channels. Together. We are showing, not just ourselves, but the public, that we do not see each other as competition and that we value each other's contributions to fighting the cause. The support that we give each other is crucial for growing a competitive advantage against our non-Belmont partners. Our own individual party performance will also benefit from new direction and the experiences we will gain. The Belmont Group will help drive project management within our own parties, and it can help assist and inform internal decision making and help us make improvements. Everything to do with growing our parties, from raising funds, finding candidates and helpers, gaining supporters, setting up new branches, promotions, marketing and tackling other kinds of administrative issues, can be supported by the Belmont Group when we remember the strategy and our role within it. The bigger picture is that we're all, even collectively, a handful of seeds in the political garden. But with the right nurturing and support, we can all flourish and outgrow the weeds that dominate. We have time before the next elections. Let's use it constructively.
Thanks, Kath. Questions, please?
Not so much a question, but more nobody spoke. That actually should be a template as to how we do things. But it should be a booklet. It should be part of a booklet because.
I'll make one.
Yeah, but it needs to be made into as a kind of guideline of how we do things, I think, because it's really good. It spells out what we should be doing. Yeah.
It is, and we should all have input into that document, I think, and it gives us a sense of direction, and will just help us plan for our own internal things and what we're doing as a unit.
Well, I'm just wondering if that plus also other things that Pat's come up with and various other campaigners have used, and Brian, all the methods could actually be put into some sort of a booklet and call it the Belmont Handbook or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, I'm happy to share this.
It would be a great campaigning tool for people, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I do think that's something we could all work on together.
Just would like to know how many candidates you're going to be fielding in May, and do you have any potential winners, like hopeful winners?
I don't know. I couldn't give you a figure for May. The last elections that we had 7, I think, was it? So probably around about that figure.
I'm not sure if there's any potential winners there. Or...
I don't know. Mark, it's the boxing win, aren't you, Mark?
No? Question, no. Right, okay. Thanks again, Catherine.
Okay, good afternoon. I am the Treasurer. My name is Jeremy Moss. I'm the Treasurer for the English Democrats and the Workers of England Union. But I'm not going to talk about the English Democrats today. I'm going to concentrate on the Workers of England Union. Now, this union was set up, it's not as old as the English Democrats, but it was set up with members from the English Democrats. And I've been a union rep for about 8 years or so. And the first time I started, I did the typical union things. People have been late, people have been rude, people have been accused of not working and everything. So I was having to defend this. However, it really started the Workers of England with all the COVID, because people working in care homes or old people's homes and everything had to have the injection. Whether or not they actually worked with the people, they might have been working in the laundry or catering or anything like that, but they had to have the injection. If they didn't have it, they would have been sacked. And what happened is, for me dealing with like 1 or 2 cases a year, because we're a very small union, I was dealing with literally hundreds. I had over 200, and I wasn't even the smallest, the largest contributor, because the other ones who defended more cases, and I was defending like elderly people who'd worked in the company for 20, 30 years, worked in the kitchens, didn't really see the residents and everything like that. They just didn't want an injection. And so this is how the Workers of England really started, and we became a union of about 100 or 200 people, going up to, I mean, the meeting, we had our AGM last week, and the Workers of England is about 10,000 people now, and it is growing. And I'll just tell you something, because I don't know if any of you are in a union, or you might know some, relations or friends or anything like that who are in a union, but we really suggest, and this is why I'm here, is that you change to us, because we will defend you on any situation. And what happens is that when you're in if you say something, or even something like, say there's a demonstration going past where you work and you make a comment or anything like that, and then you can get in trouble and your management will speak to you, and you're in a union, say you're Nalgo or Nupi or whatever, okay, you will only get a colleague to defend you, right? Now that colleague might be obviously might not agree with you. That's one thing. But secondly, they might be a bit frightened of the management, right? So whether or not they're going to really defend your case. With us, you get independent, like me or anyone else, you get independent advisors, and if the case goes on further, which sometimes it has, we then refer it back to our full-time union people who are very good, who are really good, but they're much, there aren't as many, there are a lot more people like me who will do the initial, take the notes and just see exactly what's what and what's said correctly and everything like that. Now, one thing which I have to say, which I have been told to say, is that our union is cheaper than others, right? Okay, so you have independent workers, you don't have the staff members there. Now we will defend the members, and it is really important that, because there have been so many issues I've had it when I was actually working, and people were called in because they'd had an argument with someone and they said something really bad because they'd been upset and everything like that. And this is the bonus of being a member of the Workers of England Union. We will defend you on that one. And again, we were the only union to defend workers for the COVID jabs. And what happened is, you had people like, when I was talking about this old lady who worked in the kitchen, she'd been in the union for 30 years. How much money had she spent? And she'd never done anything wrong. She was not late, she was not sick, and everything, because the manager actually sat in with me and was really upset, was crying and everything, because they were good friends and everything like that. And this union just didn't do anything at all for her, and I just that's why that's really basically all I want to do. So do think about it, and if you have people who are in unions and they're not happy, the Workers of England Union, I haven't brought any stuff, I'm afraid, with me, but we're all on the websites and everything like that.
A friend of mine was defended by your union.
Good.
Under sexual discrimination, was awarded quite a sizable
amount of money. Well, we have actually got people who are
she had a barrister, it was in a tribunal.
Yeah, we have people a lot more clever and really good arguments and everything like that, which are really good.
Yeah, Jeremy, I know that Pat Harrington's central to the Workers.
Yeah.
Is there any possibility you could get involved with Belmont in some sort of advisory capacity on workers' rights?
Well, I will actually put, if that's okay, I'll put that too, because
I know Pat, I saw him, I've known him for donkey's years, obviously, very way, but also I saw him about 2 months ago, and I did mention the Belmont, but I didn't actually mention that. So yeah.
Right.
So that would be an idea.
Okay, I will speak to him about that. And actually also, I'm going to add something else, which isn't really to do with this, but it's about somebody who wanted to speak about the possibility of about halal killing. Now, she couldn't come because she said the journey was too far. But seeing so many Scottish people here, I will tell them. And it's a GoFundMe, and it's about halal. We can't change it because there's 1930 law about the killing of the meat and everything like that. But we can get them to do stunning, which they don't do, and it's very cruel for the animal. It takes a while and everything. So that's again on GoFundMe. If you go to GoFundMe, key in halal, you'll get that. And I said that I would speak to you about that.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you. I've passed around 2 different versions of this. One is incredibly badly photocopied, and I've given it to my fellow Scots because you will understand the Scottish situation. And but everyone else, I've given you the good copy. I use my title Doctor because there's an Alan McManus in Glasgow who's a renowned snooker player, and I don't want for my very big mouth. But I'm not a real doctor. I'm not like tech. North and south of the border, the difference in the political scene, I think, there are two factors, and one is that obviously Scotland is a much smaller place in terms of population. Obviously there's far fewer voters, there's far fewer people involved in politics, and certainly involved in small party politics. I thank you for your attention. Could we all pay attention, including on the couch? I'm sorry, but I'm a teacher and this is what I do. I think it's really important because we need to know who we are, and especially because we're coming up to these very important elections in England and in Holyrood. All right, I told you I'd get a big mouth. Anyway. There are very few of us, and we all know each other, especially in small parties, and that means that we need to keep at least a civil relationship with each other, because people are moving parties, because there are fallouts, there are, personality things, and as Cass said, we need to rise above that. We need to maintain a working relationship with each other, and especially now, Ken and I, I'm always finding unionists and saying, hey, phone Ken and stand for ADF. He's always finding nationalists and saying, phone sovereignty. And that's the other thing about Scotland, is that the unionist and nationalist divide is very deep and very bitter. My mum's English, so I know, and I was chairman of Freedom Alliance, and one of the reasons why I moved to sovereignty is because coming up to the Holyrood elections, I felt it was confusing to voters for me standing in Scotland and saying I am a Scottish nationalist, but my party is neutral on Scottish independence, therefore decentralisation of power, but they're neutral, and voters were trying to get their heads around that, and that was confusing. Now, our friends, the English Democrats, of course, nationalism is a burning issue for them, but for most people in England, if you said, are you a nationalist or are you a unionist, they would find it difficult to comprehend that question. But in Scotland, unionists will normally only vote for a unionist, nationalists only for a nationalist. The other dimension is the woke and the awake. Now, I don't need to explain those terms to anyone in this room, and I know we don't have a lot of time. But there's also another dimension, and that is those, as I've said, like Freedom Alliance, who are obviously awake, who are neutral in terms of constitutional arrangements. And in Scotland, there's really only two parties. And when I talk about these parties, these are not necessarily all registered in Scotland, but they are operating in Scotland. I understand that there's considerable expertise in this room, and some of these you may put question marks against and say, Alan, I think you've got that bit wrong, okay? And, I probably have. The Scottish Family Party are a socially conservative party, and they really are interested in one thing, and that is protecting and promoting the welfare of heterosexual married couples and their children. And that is their big thing. Of course, nowadays, that attracts negative censure, and people find them homophobic and transphobic and all the rest of it. But to give them their due, that is what they say. Personally, and I think this is because I'm coming to it from a civil liberties point of view, I find that difficult sometimes, because in the social media scene they're not talking about civil liberties, so they're not making a difference between, for example, drag queens in primary schools and some guy in Uganda who is just trying to get through the day without being killed or sent to prison for 14 years. And I don't think that anyone, I could be wrong, but I don't think that anyone in this room wants to go back to criminalising homosexuality and sending people to prison or killing them. But that is the situation in some African countries, and I think that we need to make a distinction, because that ever-growing acronym is not helpful at all. So that's them. The Workers' Party, run by George Galloway, is very anomalous because he was a unionist, clearly, now claims to be a Scottish nationalist, but in fact he is.
Changes every week.
Right. He's an international socialist. His running mate is a white woman who is English, who is standing in Glasgow, wears the hijab, she's a convert to Islam. They have a big Muslim backing in that party, and she is standing in a constituency, and in doing so she is stepping on the toes of the leader of the Independence for Scotland party, which, if you look at this little scheme, these are the half-awake nationalist parties, right? And they are ALPA, or ALBA, you can say either, famously formerly led by Alex Salmon, who are a kind of mini SNP, and they're fairly woke. All of these parties would say that they're sex realist or gender critical, meaning that they accept there's male and there's female and that's it. Some of them would reinforce those traditional roles, like the Scots Family Parties. Other ones would say, if a wee girl wants to play football, she's still a wee girl. You know, she's not a wee boy. So we don't need to, reinforce those roles, but there are only two sexes. So that's the difference between sex realist and gender critical, you could say. I for I is independence for independence, and it's a network of independence. Those two groups, together with Sovereignty, my party, now make up a political grouping called Liberate Scotland. I'll come back to that. Together with Sovereignty, in the awake nationalists are the Scots Libertarians, who are like Libertarians south of the border in that they are basically anarcho-capitalists. I find them very refreshing. I don't agree with them on everything, but they have got a bit of one-size-fits-all to their economics. Recently there has been an interesting dialogue between one of our number, Laurie Moffat, who knows all about Georgism, which some of you may know about. Economics is absolutely not my strong point. It's about land tax. And the theory is that land value is what the community earns, because you've got two houses in two different places. They are the same house. This is a posh area and the house price soars. This is a deprived area and the house price goes down. The person who owns the house has done nothing to gain that value. Who has done the work? The community. The idea of the land value tax is that that is the only ethical tax, because that work belongs to the community. As I say, it's not my forte, but it's an interesting discussion that we're having with the Libertarians, because to them tax is a terrible thing. And yes, but the land value tax is the least bad of the taxes. So, because you will know that it is difficult to take libertarianism into the community, to the voters, and basically say you're on your own, you know. But this is an interesting midway point. To go back to Liberate Scotland, and this is really what I want to explain to you. I'm really grateful to Rob, who talked about the list system, which means that it makes it easier for me to do this now. When we vote for Holyrood, this is what we do. We get two ballot papers. Ballot paper one is the constituency. It's first past the post. Holyrood constituencies, Scottish Parliament constituencies, are very similar to Westminster. Sometimes they have the same name or similar, sometimes the same boundaries or similar. You know how to do that one. So, for example, let's make a fictitious thing. If Mark Turnbull is standing in Paisley South for Freedom Alliance, then if I'm there, I can vote, for Mark Turnbull. If he gets first past the post, he gets in. Freedom Alliance gets an MSP in Holyrood, right? We understand that. Similarly, if Ken Thompson is standing in Paisley North, if I'm there, I can vote for him. ADF might get their first MSP in Holyrood. But in that region of west of Scotland, which is a big region, so you can, in terms of England, you can think about maybe northwest of England, right, and all the different constituencies in there. So in west of Scotland, which includes these two constituencies and many more, I get a second ballot paper, and this, as Rob has explained, is the regional list. What I do as a voter is I rank the parties, not the candidates. So I might, for example, write ADF 1, because what Freedom Alliance and ADF might have done, and this of course is up to yourselves, is Mark might have decided to stand in his constituency for Freedom Alliance and for ADF in the same way that people will stand for the Labour and cooperative parties. But for the list, he may decide to stand for ADF. Now, why would he do that strategically? Because it means that then voters are voting for one away list. And we don't have a list for ADF, a list for Freedom Alliance, a list for Heritage, a list for, you know, whoever else is standing there. So it doesn't split up the vote. Now, the list is proportional representation, so the voter ranks the parties. If if Ken's number one, for example, and he gets 5% of the vote, gentlemen, I'm going to tell you off, as I told off the ladies, I'm very fair. If he gets 5% of the vote, then he gets in, right? If he gets in and they get more votes, then Mark gets in too. All right, so that's something for the parties to think about. Okay, so who else? Just a word on the main parties. Labour. There is no red surge happening in Scotland, and there has not been for the past 2 years. And if you see the SNP has not been winning by-elections, you're absolutely right. And Labour has been winning by-elections. Are they more popular? No. It's because the decrease in SNP is so sharp. The decrease in Labour is not so sharp, but they're going down. But SNP have gone down more, so Labour breaks the surface and they get in. That's what's happening. Lib Dems apparently are doing quite well in some rural constituencies. Why? It's not because people are voting for Lib Dem policies, because as we all know, they don't have any. They just go with the wind. What people are doing is voting for dynasties of members of a family who are local and are considered a good pair of hands and have got this knowledge and expertise that they pass down through the generations. And that's why, as we all know, flying people into rural constituencies is just not a good idea, because it doesn't work. The Tories sometimes are doing well in rural constituencies as well for those reasons. But basically, all the big parties are doing badly in Scotland, and Reform is rising. Whether they're going to break through in Scotland, I don't know. The other news, very quickly, I'm going to share with you from Scotland, is the Greens. The Scottish Greens, who are a different party, right? None of those other big parties are separate parties, right? Scottish Labour is just a description, Scottish Tories, Scottish Lib Dems, they're just descriptions. Scottish Greens are a Scottish registered party. Recently, their eco-socialist wing has left them and gone to your party. Why? Because the Scottish Greens are too middle class. Led by one person, since this is being recorded, called Ellie Gomersall, who didn't used to have that name and didn't used to present as that gender. Right? And this person is an extremely middle class person, and your party, you may know, is being run by millionaires. Now, I think we should have a whip round, because one of the millionaires only has, poor lassie, only has £1.5 million of a net worth, right? All the rest has far more. And yet the Greens are calling, the ex-Greens are calling the Green Party middle class. What I'm trying to say is that the Green Party is being impoverished by its radical base, but they are not learning. They are still going broke for woke, and so are the SNP. So what we've got in Scotland is that we have this overlap of Belmont parties and Belmont adjacent parties, where we don't particularly care whether we are independent or whether we're part of the union. We have our own views and we have our own preferences, and yes, we are working with that. But the main thing that we want is truth and freedom for everyone. But being nationalist or being unionist means that we've got a platform. So I have stood shoulder to shoulder with Alistair McConaughey, who is Scotland's biggest unionist. I have stood there in George Square in Glasgow, and together with Ken and other people and Ryan, and said to people, I am Roman Catholic because religion is all over this divide in Scotland, and I am a Scottish nationalist, and I am here for freedom of speech, and I am naming what I am because other people like me can come and get this warm welcome. So what I'm saying is that we can cross these divides, but we can also use these tribes, these clans, as they would be in Scotland, in order to speak to people who are not awake, because they will listen. Because unfortunately, these people here, in the conglomerate of Liberate Scotland, in the network of independence Eye for Eye, and in the political party ISP, are kind of soft woke. You know, they're soft on migrants because they're be kind, and they're soft on man-made climate change because, you know, they just don't know the truth. But they are listening. They're listening to us, and one of the reasons why they're listening to us is because we are doing what we're all doing here. We're making electoral pacts and we're being gracious to them. And that's important. You know, politeness, it's old-fashioned, and it's really, really important. And on that note, I don't want to be rude any longer, because I am naturally rude, as you've seen. And that's all I've got to say. Thanks for the question, yes.
So, because you've got multiple parties, and this would apply for the Liberate one as well, the coordination has to be on point, because and you have to have 10, for example, signatories to put forward an MP candidate. So you would have to constituency and list in Scotland, for example, and likewise organise all of the members within the party for a specific location. So it might be.
No, we've done, what I've done is I've given you a very simplified version of our electoral strategy, because in fact what we're doing in the 8 regions of Scotland, sovereignty are basically controlling the Highlands and the North East, like Aberdeen, all that kind of area, and ADF are basically controlling west of Scotland. So I live in west of Scotland, but I'm not standing there. I've moved over a constituency because of this pact. Now, Ken and I have been having an informal conversation, because I'm not in the Committee of Sovereignty, to say, would we consider perhaps standing in each other's regions, but not, I would say, not in each other's constituencies, because that might give us a bit more scope, and that's an ongoing discussion. But we do need to, we're 6 months away, we need to decide, because I've already printed, I'm already in social media, people are already doing their campaigns. So we've got about another month maybe to absolutely decide who's standing where, and then we just have to go for it.
But you know, what was mean was the actual members of your political party, so the rank and file, who will need to go out and leaflet if you've got enough money to leaflet for that collectively, to organise that.
There was a by-election recently in Fife, and all of these parties, all of these, you know, half-awake parties, they know that I say this about behind the back, they came and helped our candidate leaflet in Fife. So this kind of thing is already happening. So sovereignty is an interesting intersection of here's sovereignty, here's Belmont, here's Liberate Scotland. There's a bit of a tension there, but it means that there's lots of people that we can speak to. So I've been encouraging ADF to do something similar, and I think that an ADF list would be a good idea. It's obviously not up to me, but it's a suggestion. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, you've been talking about property tax, and I'll come in, so I missed. What were you talking about there? Land tax?
Land tax, yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that in a nutshell?
Well, it's just, so the idea basically is that, you know, tax is theft. You know, it's like you work, I'm the government, I come along, I take your money, and I give you it back in dribs and drabs, you know, and then say you should be grateful for it. And if I just left you alone, then you would have enough money to sort your own life out. And that's what the libertarians say. The problem with that is that what if you know, you're a young family, you have a disabled child who's going to need an awful lot of help, who hasn't built up all the credits that your parents will have built up all their working lives. What do we do about that? We do need some kind of public money, you know. And the libertarians would say, well, you just do it with philanthropy. You know, philanthropy with charity.
Or insurance, private insurance.
Right, okay, so there's lots of different ways. I mean, another idea that I personally have is that if we made the councillors and the MPs and the MSPs trustees of public money, and put on them the legal duties of trustees, because they have to manage money well, speaking as a law student, I think that might be interesting, because what happens, we elect these people and they've got loads of money and they just start chucking it about. And who did they chuck it to? Their friends, as we know. So it's an ongoing discussion about land tax, about how that works. Georgism, look up Georgism. I don't know much about it, but it's interesting.
No, but that's not, I mean, you can look the value of the property over here was more than one over there.
Yes.
So that's
the last, that is the basis of Georgism.
It's because where it sits on, where it sits,
because it doesn't usually be asset rich but cash poor. What do you think about
yes. Okay. It's not my forte. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not. But I'm privileged to look up. Any other questions? No? Great. Okay.
Thanks, Alan. Before I go to the last speaker, there's quite a lot of the buffet left. I've got some bags here. You've got long journeys to go home. Please take the buffet with you. Don't leave it here. Bags here for you. Okay, right. Thank you. Right, so final speaker, Sid Pepper.
It's lovely to meet everybody. Yeah, there's a lot of people I've not met before, but don't forget the buffet. There's nothing like a free ride. The buffet isn't free, but it's an excellent buffet.
Yeah,
thank you. Don't forget contribution, please, otherwise it's got to come out of your pocket.
It is.
Right, well, just a brief history on me. I was brought up in a strongly Labour area, no such thing as a Conservative MP, so I really didn't show any interest in politics at all. And then Mr Farage comes along and makes me think we could change things. So I joined UKIP, had an office in Mansfield, one of only 3 in the country, and worked really hard in Mansfield, and did that well that I'm personally responsible for bringing in a Tory MP into Mansfield, because I got rid of, destroyed the Labour vote. So I know it's possible to do this. But then we look at this Farage fella, and he's affecting our lives now on a daily basis, in as much as we all need new blood, we all need new people, particularly younger people, to come and work for us, to stand for office, but they're going the easy route, which is reform, because it's sexy, it's almost guaranteed, this is the one with the spotlight. So they're taking from us our potential new people, which is not easy to overcome. But I just remember the time when Farage walked out on UKIP and effectively destroyed UKIP, had a stroke. He then set up BP, and I was one of 183 people who paid £1,000 to be considered to be an MP. So I went down to London and was in front of a panel, but just before I went in front of a panel, my phone rang. I answered it, and it was Kate, former Mayor of Mansfield. Oh, she said, I've got great news, I'm going to be BP's representative in Mansfield. I said, that's interesting. Guess where I am? I'm in London waiting to be interviewed for the same position. So I'll go in, don't pay that's £183,000 that bastard's draw. Sorry.
I'm most pleased this lady's present.
Correct. Anyway, so I'll go into this, and these 4 lovely ladies say, right, Mr. Staff, would you like to take your pitch? I said, no, you can F off, you've already given it to somebody else without even discussion with me. So that just shows how false Farage in the first place, walking away from something he had created. Don't forget, he had created UKIP. And in my opinion, 2019, had he not left, UKIP would be where reform is now. This is the absolute waste. This is the absolute waste. Don't forget, reform will win the next election, not because of them, but because of it's been gifted to them by Labour and the Conservative Party, who for decades have been dreadful. We have not been professionally governed. Well, I don't think we ever have been, to be honest, because it was tribalist before, wasn't it? Conservative Labour. I don't think any of them ever have proved to be any good. Looking at Brown with his gold and all this, that, and the other. It's not been right, has it? So basically, he offers to people hope. I don't believe he can deliver it, but that doesn't really matter, because people can believe in hope. Because at the moment, you could not vote Labour and you could not vote Conservative. That's a matter of fact, isn't it? Absolutely. So to me, we've got this double whammy. We've got the problem that we can't gain easily new members, because reform's sucking them up like a bloody Dyson. But the other thing is, because they will fail, and we've now got rid of the two big parties, there is room for other parties. Right, there is room for us, whatever we stand at. The idea of us working together is to try to create something bigger, right? So there is room for us despite what's happening, and that's what I'm trying to encourage, and that's why tech, I know, has the answer to all of NHS problems. And I've talked to him about this, and he alluded to it in his bit. Nobody knows that their local council can change NHS locally.
Yep.
People do not know this. People do not understand this. They have no knowledge of this whatsoever. He can tell you this. We should be telling our people this, including yourself.
Yeah.
So in your local manifestos, you could be saying now, right, we are going to tackle the fact you can't see a doctor. Now this is a universal problem. Everyone's got a problem. There's nobody in this room who can see a doctor. So if we know that, let's go for something that's local and something that people feel passionate about. I mean, I feel passionate about all the immigrants we're getting, but that's not going to win votes. So the situation is...
You'd be surprised.
We'll see. We'll see. We haven't seen it yet. But the point being is, listen to Tech. He can advise you of how to write up in your own what you should be promoting to get elected, so that you can be on the board that decides your local NHS situations, and that's something real and positive. When I realised that, and last thought check, I thought, now that is the chink we're looking for. That is the chink, because Reform haven't dropped onto it. Nobody's dropped onto it. It's ours. Obviously, once it's out, everybody will pinch it. So all I'm imploring anybody, please, check with Tech. He can tell you how to write up specifically about what the local people can do in the NHS. So apart from that, safe journey home, everybody. And just keep the committee involved.
Any questions to Sid?
Oh, sorry.
Questions to Sid?
I've not got a question, but I've just got fine speech by you, Sid. I'd just like to say to everybody while we're here, I've started a Facebook group about 4 weeks ago. In the space of 4 weeks, it's went up from 0 to 23,500. This momentum seems to be continuing. So it's something that you could all use to promote your own political parties.
What's the Facebook group called?
UK Against Digital ID.
UK Against Digital ID.
Against digital ID.
You on it? Aye. So you can all use it to promote your campaigns. Just stick something digital ID related.
Like I'm sticking on sharing in Insta.
Aye, it's on Insta. Is it on Insta? That's yeah. This one's on Facebook, but it's it looks as if the growth is going to continue. So if you could all join that, and I mean it's got up. I think it's going to go up to about over 100,000. It's one of the speakers mentioned earlier about a post reaching, I think it was yourself, Brian, reaching 500,000.
Yeah.
So I put a post on about the strike, about the Remembrance Day against the digital ID. That went up to 500,000. The page only had about 16,000 at the time, but the post actually got up to about 750,000.
Yeah, there's a lot of power there.
A lot of power there, so there's a lot of potential, and we can all use it to promote our own stuff.
Yeah.
If any are on Telegram, the same group on Telegram, UK Against Digital ID, if you could go into it, if you could get your phones out just now, guys, and go into the group on Facebook, and if you could share it, and if you could invite people on it, if you're unsure how to do it, I can show you. And
Just befriend you as well.
You go to me.
Yeah, right.
I'll have to wait till
Anyone want National Party as well?
Now, the only thing we've got to do now is the signing. We've got to arrange that in some way. That's how we're going to do it.
We've got time for 2 more speakers.
Have we?
5 minutes each.
Why does anybody want? Are you okay with it?
So
yeah.
go into a Paul River.
Yeah. Okay, go on.
Go on, John.
Well,
sorry.
Yeah, he's dressed for the occasion, isn't he? That's his 5 minutes up.
Next. Okay.
Go, John.
3, 2, 1, go.
Well, obviously we've come because we're part of the Belmont Accord, but it's a bit mad though I already know the English Democrats. I worked with Teresa in Batley. I met Jonathan Till, who was leader of the Freedom Alliance, also in Batley. I might have joined them if Pat had come first with a. Yeah, that's right. And I might have joined the Freedom Alliance if Pat hadn't got to me first. But you know, I'm all in for this. I'm all in for coming together. I'm all in for this sort of stuff. So it's not like something new, really. I already feel part of a family. Brian, I've been friends with Brian on Facebook and on social media. I've been dying to. First question I asked him today was, who does his social media for him? Because I didn't think it was him. I thought he had like someone doing it for him. But he said it's him, and I just can't believe that. His social media is banging, honestly, Brian. It's absolutely banging.
Years, Brian.
But yeah, so and I like the stuff Kath said. I've liked all the speakers and stuff like that. And we do need to come together, guys. We really do. Yeah. And this is a time. Me and Pat talked about it. British politics is flaking away. The big parties are destroying each other. Labour and Tory, they're never going to survive. In Oldham, where I'm from, Angela Rayner, a seat's gone. Deborah Abrams, Jim McMahon, all got in with the lowest majorities that they ever have done. The second big majority in Oldham is an independent group now. They also asked me to stand for them last the other week, but things are changing, and this is the time to get involved in politics right now. Right now, it's so easy to get a seat. When Jean Stretton was alive, who's been a Labour leader in Oldham in my ward, you had to get 2,000 minimum votes. Now, I'll be getting in with 900 votes. Yeah. 900. And I've documented this, Pat knows this, I've showed everything else with 900 votes is all I need, not 2,000 or anything like that. I just need 900, and this is across the country. And you know, we have little parties starting up. We've got one called Failsworth Independent Party, and in 3 years have got 5 seats out of 6. That's how quick they grew, and people just wanted to vote for them and not the normal parties. This is our time, guys, and we're going to do it.
Thanks.
3, 2, 1, go.
My name's Paul Rimmer from the National Housing Party. I just want to first comment, 1976 Brian started. I joined the National Front in 1976, 50 years ago. But I was 10 years younger than Brian, so I don't have time on it. But since then, I've been a member of 8 different parties. There's 7 on here. I've been a member of 8, so I've topped that. But me main claim to fame is stood for Mayor of Liverpool twice, got thousands of votes for the English Democrats, and then I stood for Police Commissioner, got 7,132 votes, which is quite a substantial vote for a minor party. We had great campaigns, but the situation now is unique. I've never known it in England or Britain. I mean, we're all divided into English, Scottish, and Welsh today, but in Britain. Like I work on the door in a pub and I speak to a lot of people, and Liverpool is no longer Labour. There's real hostility to the Labour Party now. Keir Starmer must be the most unpopular leader in the history of this nation. Nobody can stomach the guy. Why? Because he hates us. He's the enemy of the British people. He finds us disgusting. The only sort of terms he can use to describe us is racist, fascist, whatever, far right. And he uses these terms all the time when English people mobilise over this issue. But the issue of immigration has got people really concerned now, because they're moving people into every street, every vacant house. There's a family from Africa, family from the subcontinent, family from the Middle East coming in. And people say, where can we live? You've heard this problem of homelessness, of overcrowding. It's absolutely insane. But there's a sense now that the indigenous people of this country, the white and the people who came after the war, mixed race people, people who can claim blood connection to this country, are being relegated down the scale. We're being pushed to the back of the queue. In the welfare state, they're taking our welfare state off us. Not just the NHS. Our kids are being discriminated against in education. We're being pushed out of all the social credit that is available in this society, including benefits, housing, everything. We're being pushed to the back of the queue. And yet the immigrants, who've never contributed anything, are going right to the top. There's a sort of insanity in that.
Absolutely.
And it's creating a horror. You've got to capture the emotions of this, because I went into the barber's 2 days ago to get my locks trimmed, and I've never heard people talk like that. They'd moved further right than me. They're absolutely horrified at what's happening in our society. Ordinary people, apolitical people, non-political people. In Liverpool, mostly Labour voters. In Glasgow, they've been mostly Labour voters. They're absolutely disgusted with the Labour Party. The Labour Party is not our party anymore. We know the Tory Party got comprehensively rejected at the last election, and it's not coming back, is it? No. Who seriously has listened to Kemi Badenoch and taken it seriously? Nobody. So there's this huge vacuum has opened up in British politics. This huge opportunity. Now at the moment, Nigel Farage got in there with reform, and he's built a real Titanic force. Well, it might sink like the Titanic. But on top of that, the Green Party have now got on board. They are expanding. They're getting a lot of members. We get all these sort of radical fringe leftist parties soaking the support from Labour. But there's opportunities now. People, their old identities are falling away, and they're prepared to listen to different voices, and they're prepared to vote for different parties. And you can see this in the by-elections. Now, obviously, in this cycle, it's going to be reform, because they're at the forefront of people's consciousness, They're the party that are claiming alternatives. I mean, Pat has fought a sterling campaign in Holborn, and because it's so street level and personal, he might get in. I mean, Pete Malloy won in Sedgefield fighting that sort of local campaign, but it's a tough campaign to go. But we can climb on the shoulders of reform. We can take what they've done and we can say, no, we've got to go further. Because this crisis cannot be overcome by old-style politics in Westminster. We need radicalism. We need a revolution in this country. We really do. I mean, that word can be overused, but we've got to turn everything around, because the momentum of the last 60 years is all dragging us down into the pit, destroying this country. Now, I'm sure many of you here have heard of the Clergy Plan, the deliberate intention to replace the indigenous populations of Europe with third world immigrants. That plan now is in full motion, and it's reaching almost levels of success. It's almost going to win. But the thing is, all it's going to produce is chaos. All it's going to produce is economic decline. All it's going to produce is the crumbling of our state and the collapse of our welfare state. All it's going to produce is fear for everyone in this society. The breakup, our cohesion will go, our safety's going, we know that. We're seeing people now, they're scared to let their daughters out in so many areas. There's horror in this country. There is a sense now, the horror. It's amazing how intense people are becoming about this. But even if the Clergy Plan succeeds, it's going to be an absolute catastrophe. It could never actually sustain itself. So the people of this country have got loyalty to this country, who've got roots in this country, who've got a real commitment to this country. We've got to stay together. We've got to rally the ranks, and we've got to fight back, even though it might look desperate at times. Even though it looks like we, the British people, are being pushed out and there's no hope for us. We've got to fight back, we've got to mobilise, we've got to reform, in the best sense, and take control again. And this is what this movement is all about. This is why it's so great, because so many people think like this. So many people are aware that we need radical change, that we need to mobilise people to do something different, because we've got to overthrow the globalist elite. This is the problem with reform. They've got roots in the globalist elite. And once they get in power, the Westminster blob and global capitalism will saturate them and suck the life out of them. And they won't get the radicalism that we need. But we've got to be there, because this radicalism is no longer an option in this country. We have to really address this situation now. We have to stop it and reverse it. It's not that we won't have a future in this country. There will be no future for this country. Because all the immigrants that are coming in, whether from the Middle East or Sub-Saharan Africa, they're not going to build a proper society in this country. They're coming in basically as parasites to leech off what's gone before. They can't recreate Britain. So therefore there's no hope. And therefore we are the only hope, because we know how to do it in this country. We've got a track record of success which goes back over 1,000 years. We know what works in Britain, and we've got to get control again. We've got to get control of the politics. We've got to become the ruling class of this country, the people. This is the people have got to reclaim this country. That's why we've got to realise this is a revolutionary process that we're engaged in. And for the first time in my life, I think the British people are really, they're up for it. They really, they know that the status quo cannot continue. They know that this trajectory that we're on to destruction has got to be reversed, to give anyone hope, to give their children hope. And so everyone here is so important because we're the catalyst of that movement. We're the catalyst. You see, where reform will only go so far, we can go further. I mean, on social media, you've got Rupert Lowe, he's saying some great stuff on social media. You've got Benedict with Advance, but we've got to go further than that. But the way that we bring freedom, unity, alliance, coming together in freedom, it's a winning combination. It's a winning combination. And really, we need to up our game, energise our movement, and project our message, and let people know that we're there, and they will start to join us. We've got to become a mass movement, and as Ryan said, social media is such a platform for that.
Yeah.
Social media can mobilise the people of this country. The elite can no longer control the narrative. Reform won't be able to control the narrative. We can create our own story. We can have this is what we've got to do. We've got to get our needs in the forefront of British politics.
Jesus Christ.
Now, Jesus Christ, whatever, but well, you know what I'm hearing now? People saying everyone's just talking about immigration, and the Labour politicians are saying we're sick of talking about immigration. Immigration is the issue. Without borders, without security, we can't build anything. So this is our issue because we are the people who are being saturated and being overwhelmed, and therefore we're the underdogs, we're the oppressed. And we've got to break free of that. But we've got a tradition in England that goes back a long way. You can go back to Oliver Cromwell, you can go back to the Charters, you can go back to the Peasant Rebellion, you can go back to all the movements which have empowered ordinary people in this country, the democratic process. You can see all the bills that came, the Great Reform Act 1832, the Second Reform Act 1867, Universal Franchise 1918. This is what people demanded. It's our country. We want it back, and we're going to take it back, and it's this movement that will give it the opportunity.
We are the Belmont Accord parties. We are the hope of the British people. We are here to restore the pride and the ascendancy of the United Kingdom amongst all its people. And we're here to assure the freedom, and we're here to ensure democracy. We're represented to my right, the Sovereignty Party of Scotland, Freedom Alliance, Crew First, English Democrats, Populist Party, and the National Housing Party of UK. I'll call upon Alan, speaking on behalf of Sovereignty Scotland.
So all of us have different views on the constitutional arrangements in the UK, but much more important than that is our commitment to truth and to freedom and to the welfare of everyone who lives in this beautiful land, and that's why I'm signing on behalf of Sovereignty.
Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine from Freedom Alliance, and we believe the mainstream parties have had their time. It's time for fresh blood in Parliament, and we're here to deliver that.
Brian. I'm Councillor Brian Sylvester. I'm the leader of the Crew First party. For years people have said, why can't these political parties work together? Well, here we are here, we're working together, and the political situation in this country has never been so fluid, so it's our time now.
Jeremy?
Hi, I'm Jeremy Moss from the English Democrats, and I'm very pleased to be associated and part of the Belmont group.
Hi, I'm Russell White from the Populist Party. I believe that this country's in the 11th hour, or at the 11th hour, and we need to save it urgently, so I've decided with the Populist Party to join the Belmont Accord.
John?
My name's John Lawrence, National Housing Party. 4 words: we are better together. That's why I'm signing the accord.
Thank you. Right, pass it down a little way.
Keep it back down, keep it more chocolate. Yes, yes, yes.
Good done. Thanks for coming, Jeremy.
Thank you.